Pain dragged Li Hao awake. He pushed himself up from an unfamiliar bed, massaging his temples as he tried to remember the night before. This was not his home, and he should have been there working on a project proposal. So where was he? The instant he tried to stand, something tore through his mind. Memory fragments stabbed into him like tiny knives. Li Hao curled tightly on the mattress, gritted his teeth, and refused to cry out while his entire body trembled. The assault lasted nearly half an hour. When he could move again, Li Hao crossed to the mirror. A delicate, deathly pale boy stared back at him, 15 or 16, about 1.75 meters tall, lean and clearly accustomed to exercise. He checked from every angle. There was no illusion to dismiss. Li Hao slumped beside the bed and faced the truth. He had transmigrated, yet grief never quite came. His former self had been an orphan, a corporate worker already in his 30s with little achievement and no close tie pulling him back. Perhaps this second life was not a loss. First useful fragment supplied a name and a place. He was still Li Hao, now 15 years old, an ordinary citizen of City Number 7 and a student at Outer City Number 3 Middle School. His father, Li Dajin, was a police officer. His mother was a housewife. Those memories described a society shaped by humans controlling exotic beasts. The key was a beast taming method. Like cultivation techniques in the novels Li Hao once read, these methods had different levels. The more sophisticated the method, the stronger the beast its user could control. Federation's official ladder rose through 7 ranks: elementary, intermediate, advanced, great master, grandmaster, saint grade, and finally legendary beast tamer. The names were simple. Climbing them was not. Advancing even one stage could be as difficult as ascending to heaven. Numbers made the gap brutal. Lower-ranked beast tamers were plentiful, but the entire alliance registered only about 10,000 grandmasters. Saint-grade beast tamers numbered merely a few hundred. Above all of them stood only 10 legendary beast tamers. Power at the summit was almost unimaginably rare. Difficulty did not reduce the demand. Becoming a beast tamer meant escaping the bottom of society, so students fought desperately for places at Federal Public University. Private universities existed, backed by aristocratic families and chambers of commerce, but their tuition placed them beyond ordinary households like Li Hao's. Tuition was only the beginning. Capturing an exotic beast required money, and raising one kept consuming money afterward. Without heavy financial support, becoming truly powerful was wishful thinking. Li Hao could only sigh. Even after crossing into another world, he still had not escaped the torment of being poor. Li Hao was ready to sleep when a colder question stopped him. This body was healthy. Its father was a police officer and its mother a housewife. Why then had the original Li Hao vanished? There was only one soul inside now, his own. Where had the boy's soul gone? After a frantic search, one fragment finally surfaced. The original Li Hao faced a mysterious person whose face was hidden behind a fox mask. Without explanation, the stranger reached out and struck him hard on the forehead, the last clear action before the memory broke into something darker. Fox-masked person left one message. A great fortune had been entrusted to the boy temporarily. If he could not bear it, they would retrieve it from his grave. Then the speaker turned into a shadow and disappeared, leaving Li Hao with a promise that sounded as much like a death sentence as a gift. What fortune? What was he supposed to bear? The fragment explained neither the transmigration nor the missing soul. Li Hao searched for the masked person through every memory he could reach. Night passed in silence. By the time pale light appeared in the east, he still had no useful answer. That sleepless night followed Li Hao straight into class. Outer City Number 3 Middle School belonged to a mid-tier city and possessed equally ordinary resources. Li Hao sat among 15 and 16-year-olds with exhaustion written across his face, remembering school days lived by another body in another world. An elbow nudged him back to the present. It belonged to Xiao Miao, Li Hao's best friend and one of the rare wealthy heirs with no ambition to tame beasts. Xiao Miao's reasoning was shamelessly simple. Unless the Federation collapsed, his family's money could support generations. That confidence rested on real power. The Xiao family sold armed protection for dangerous journeys between human cities, much like mercenaries in Li Hao's old world. More than 100 primary beast tamers and over a dozen intermediate ones served them, while Xiao Miao's father, Xiao Daging, was an advanced beast tamer. This time, however, Xiao Miao had news worth hearing. That afternoon, their famous senior Cheng Yudong was returning to her old school. More importantly to him, she was bringing her six-tailed snow spirit fox, giving the students a rare chance to see the exotic beast up close. Cheng Yudong was no ordinary alumna. A genius who had risen from the slums into the Federal Public University, she was already the Federation's youngest corporal and youngest intermediate beast tamer. Her performance during City Number 13's C-rank Beast Tide had earned her promotion from the local commander. Her principal partners were a purple vine colt and the six-tailed snow spirit fox. The fox had already reached C-rank leader while Cheng Yudong was still young and studying at the university. Even Xiao Miao, who wanted nothing to do with beast tamer battles, could understand how extraordinary that was. Federation's beast hierarchy made that achievement clear. E-rank creatures were ordinary. D-rank marked a squad leader, and C-rank a leader capable of ruling a small beast population. At B-rank, a commander could claim an entire territory. Cheng Yudong's fox had already entered that dangerous upper climb. Above commander stood A-rank overlord and S-rank dominator, beings rarely encountered outside the world's most dangerous regions. Beyond even them were SS-rank legendary and SSS-rank mythical creatures. Since the Federation's founding, humanity had essentially never seen those final two levels. The top of the ladder remained almost unimaginable. At afternoon, Cheng Yudong returned to her alma mater with the snow spirit fox. The students divided their attention predictably. The girls stared at the luxurious, graceful beast. Most of the boys stared at Cheng Yudong. Li Hao was the exception. He could not take his eyes off the fox. And translucent information appeared before his eyes. Snow Spirit Fox. C-rank leader, race rank, six-tailed, growth limit, B+, high-level commander, trait, calm, cultivatable directions, beast, ice, and spirit. Li Hao did not admire its beauty now. He stared because impossible knowledge had placed itself directly in his vision. Golden Finger. Li Hao rubbed his eyes, but the box remained. Only when he dragged his gaze away did it slowly fade. Looking back made the truth unavoidable. This resembled the advanced appraisal skill from his old games, powerful enough to expose temperament, cultivation options, and even a creature's ultimate growth limit. Inside, the former corporate slave was ecstatic. At last, the transmigrator's missing advantage had appeared, and it was far more useful than he had dared hope. Outside, Li Hao kept himself controlled. A power this heaven-defying could never be exposed. Before celebrating, he needed to learn exactly what it could identify. While everyone else admired the beauty and the beast, Li Hao quietly retreated behind the crowd. He drew one silver coin from his pocket and fixed his eyes on it. If the power was truly appraisal rather than some special connection to exotic beasts, an ordinary object should answer him too. The answer appeared at once. Federal silver coin. Quantity 1. Exchange rate 1/100th of a federal gold coin or 100 federal copper coins. Objects worked. The ability was not merely a way to inspect exotic beasts, it could reveal practical information about ordinary possessions. Li Hao's guarded excitement surged into a foolish smile. It did attract notice. Xiao Miao had realized his friend was no longer beside him in the front row and followed him back. Finding Li Hao grinning at a single silver coin, he mocked him without mercy. Then Xiao Miao caught him around the neck, turning a secret triumph into an obvious disturbance. Chen Xiaoshan's reprimand cut through the training ground. This was supposed to be a rare chance to learn from Corporal Cheng Yudong, not a place for Li Hao and Xiao Miao to wrestle in the back. Zhao immediately released his friend's neck, and Li Hao returned to the front row. Cheng Yudong might have held everyone else's attention, but Li Hao watched her entirely white, six-tailed companion. After one focused breath, the private introduction box appeared again. This time he did not glance away. The longer he observed Little Snow, the more information assembled before his eyes. First entries named 3 cultivatable attributes, ice, beast, and spirit. Then came the fox's species potential. Little Snow currently possessed 6 tails, but its limit was 8. Li Hao was no longer looking at a simple creature profile. He was seeing the roots along which it could still grow. Next, figures exposed the real problem. Compatibility ranked ice at A-, spirit at B+, and beast at only B, yet current investment ran the opposite way. Beast 40%, spirit 35%, and ice just 25%. Little Snow's overall cultivation level stood at 30%. Li Hao compared talent with investment and reached a clear conclusion. Little Snow seemed to have advanced recently, but its cultivation direction had drifted off course. Beast possessed the weakest compatibility and the largest share, while Ice possessed the strongest compatibility and the smallest. That imbalance explained the wasted effort. Cheng Yudong noticed that the front row student had not taken his eyes off Little Snow. Smiling rather than taking offense, she asked whether he had something to say. Li Hao opened his mouth, then stopped. The exact appraisal could not be exposed. If he answered, he would need to disguise certainty as ordinary observation. Li Hao began with facts any knowledgeable observer might plausibly discuss. Snow spirit foxes possessed ice, beast, and spirit attributes, but they were not lions or tigers. Beast should not dominate their development. Little Snow's aura, he added carefully, seemed especially compatible with ice. Perhaps Cheng should cultivate in that direction instead. Cheng walked to Little Snow and gently stroked the white fox's nape. She did not interrogate Li Hao. To her, he was still only a middle school student with slightly above-average grades. Even so, his observation matched her experience. Beast progress had been poor, while the ice attribute she had never deliberately cultivated had advanced rapidly. Li Hao suggested taking Little Snow to an exotic beast research institute. Every city maintained one as a gathering place for exotic beast scholars, and its technical equipment could analyze creatures properly. Among Beast Tamers, such institutes carried status comparable to vital defense posts. His hidden answer could therefore be checked by recognized experts. When the exchange meeting ended, Cheng stopped Li Hao before he could leave. She placed a slip of paper in his hand, the contact information for her personal optical computer. Whether or not the Institute confirmed his advice, he had reminded her of an important issue with Little Snow, and she wanted to thank him. Cheng told him to contact her whenever he had questions about Beast Tamers. Her own rank might not be high, she said, but she could still help, and he would be welcome in city number 13. Then she waved farewell and left with the six-tailed snow spirit fox. Xiao Miao immediately demanded to know when Li Hao had learned such profound exotic beast knowledge. Was he planning to become an exotic beast scholar? Li Hao rolled his eyes and claimed he had spoken casually. Zhao called that bluffing. Li Hao countered that an institute test might prove his reasoning correct. Before the two could leave the training ground, Chen Xiaoshan called Li Hao back. Li Hao sent Xiao Miao on ahead and remained with his homeroom teacher. The meeting might have ended, but the school had one more consequence waiting for him. Chen Xiaoshan produced a document. The school had worked hard to secure Li Hao a summer job at the Exotic Beast Research Institute, and the teacher urged him to cherish the chance and learn from it. In a single meeting, Li Hao's hidden gift had yielded a senior's personal contact and a formal doorway into exotic beast research. Research Institute document gave Li Hao a real opportunity, but it also sharpened the choice ahead. Becoming an exotic beast scholar required less money and carried far less danger. For poorer students unable to pursue beast taming, scholarship was often the practical road forward. Students admitted to the Federal Public University's Beast Tamer major received generous resources. The support came with a price. Every beast tamer would eventually be assigned to the city defense force, guarding human settlements against creatures pressing in from the wilderness. Threat was not limited to enormous beast tides. Smaller exotic beasts sometimes slipped into inhabited districts, and even an ordinary E-class beast could kill an unprotected citizen under the wrong conditions. That was why the defense force could never relax. Danger began before the battlefield. Officials matched recruits with suitable exotic beast cubs according to aptitude, yet the first contract could still backfire. Anyone whose beast taming method cultivation fell short risked suffering backlash at the moment of connection. Cultivation was safer once the connection existed. The final proving ground was not. Young people who had only recently been middle school students would eventually enter real combat, and the meat grinder of blood and fire maintained a frightening casualty rate. Despite the losses, Federation youths remained proud to defend humanity. Yet beast tamers did not hold up civilization alone. Exotic beast scholars analyzed creatures, developed uses for beast materials, manufactured weapons, and pursued specialized research. One path was martial, the other scholarly, and both advanced humanity. By temperament, Li Hao leaned toward scholarship. He had grown up in a peaceful world before this life and felt no hunger for fighting or killing. His hidden appraisal ability also fit research naturally, but omniscient information was not the same thing as combat strength. Li Hao wanted to travel to every corner of this world. Without real power, that freedom would be impossible, which made beast taming difficult to abandon. In a little more than a year, he would have to choose the direction of his life. After school, Li Hao walked part of the way with Xiao Miao and raised the question. Zhao's answer was uncomplicated. Li Hao should become an exotic beast scholar because it was safer. They eventually parted, and Li Hao continued toward his ordinary residential neighborhood in City Number 7's outer city. At home, the distant career debate became a family matter. How Chunmei favored the safer, scholarly road. Li Dajun reacted from the opposite direction. To him, beast taming represented an opportunity his own life had placed just beyond reach. Li Dajun had once entered the Federal Public University with excellent grades. Limited innate aptitude kept him from mastering the traditional beast taming method, so he never became a beast tamer. After Li Hao was born, that unfinished ambition gradually became hope for his son. Li Dajun patted his son's back and dismissed the idea that beast taming was inherently the wrong choice. If Li Hao entered the major, his father would support him, even if the family had to sell everything it owned. Li Hao reached into his backpack and placed the Exotic Beast Research Institute contract on the table. Li Dajun picked it up suspiciously. Hao Chunmei leaned close, and the two read it together. When they finished, their expressions could not have been more different. Hao Chunmei immediately called it a precious opportunity. The institute was not a place just anyone could enter. If Li Hao performed well during the internship, the experience could strengthen his future application to the Federal Public University's Exotic Beast Scholar major. Li Dajun refused. To him, exotic beast scholars spent their days among bottles and jars, researching like lunatics. Li Hao should spend the summer at the police station with him instead, learning martial arts that would help when he became a beast tamer. His palm struck the table. Hao Chunmei's anger came from fear, not contempt for Li Hao's ambition. She knew he had always wanted to become a beast tamer. If the profession were not so dangerous, she would agree. But she could not calmly send her son toward a life where one failure might kill him. Their concern moved Li Hao. He promised to think carefully. If he chose beast taming, he would become the fastest runner alive. If he chose scholarship, he would become the scholar with the strongest combat power. His solemn absurdity broke the tension, and his parents exchanged a smile. After dinner, the care behind Li Dajun and Hao Chunmei's argument lingered with Li Hao. In his previous life, he had been an orphan. Only now, in this unfamiliar world, did he understand the warmth of coming home to parents who worried about his future. The talk turned to school and police work. This world still had many ordinary professions, but Li Dajun's own path carried an old regret. He had graduated near the top of Federal Public University, yet failing to master the traditional beast taming method barred him from the Federal Army. Li Dajun had ultimately been assigned to an outer city police station close to home. His experience was common. Beast tamers made up less than 20% of humanity, because even the supposedly simple traditional beast taming method was difficult to cultivate. Li Dajun still hoped his son could become a beast tamer, but he knew its risks. Taking a gentle sip of tea, he told Xiao how not to burden himself. If he could get in, good. If not, another profession could still make a decent life. In the dishes, Hao Chunmei rolled her eyes. A minor officer buried in trivial work and rarely home was hardly her definition of success. With Li Hao's brain, she declared, their son would become a famous exotic beast scholar. Her teasing made the disagreement feel unmistakably domestic. Li Hao could only sigh inwardly. Whatever world he lived in, parents still dreamed of sons becoming dragons and daughters becoming phoenixes. With final examinations approaching, he excused himself to study and returned to his room. Li Hao opened the Institute's webpage and discovered why it ranked so highly. City number 7 lay between a dense eastern forest, a boundless western lake, and the northern snow ranges. In the language of his old world, the region possessed extraordinary biodiversity. At the Institute's center stood Director Su Yusheng, the Federation's premier authority on exotic beast cultivation. Unofficial beast tamers crossed thousands of miles to seek his help. Some were willing to wait a year or even 18 months for a consultation. Many of those beast tamers settled in City number 7. The city ranked only in the middle tier on paper, yet whenever beast tides attacked, these residents fought to protect the Institute and the home they had built around it. Su's presence had accidentally made the city almost impregnable. By the time Li Hao finished reading, excitement had replaced uncertainty. He stood, stretched, and dropped onto his bed with his eyes on the ceiling. Summer vacation and his chance to enter this extraordinary institute suddenly felt far too distant. Meanwhile, Su Yusheng wanted the identity of the expert who had seen the snow spirit fox's cultivation problem at a glance. Cheng Yudong supplied the answer. Li Hao, a student from outer city number 3 middle school. Su could scarcely believe the expert was still in middle school. Su happened to have a vacancy for a private assistant. Without knowing that Li Hao already held an ordinary summer internship invitation from the same institute, he issued a personal offer. One successful diagnosis had unexpectedly upgraded Li Hao's summer from routine work to direct access to the director. At 3rd middle school, the private assistant invitation arrived with 3 glistening Alliance gold coins. Chen Zishan could barely contain his delight. A renowned authority had noticed his own student. Li Hao, however, stared at the 2 invitations in his hands and felt a headache coming on. Chen patted Li Hao's shoulder and explained that Su had investigated his family's limited means. The 3 coins were research funding. Since the private post replaced the ordinary internship, Li Hao could transfer that spare invitation, but only to another 3rd middle school student. Former corporate slave inside Li Hao understood the subtext at once. He possessed the right to sell the internship opportunity, provided the buyer came from 3rd middle school. Chen had spoken loudly enough for the class to understand, but Li Hao's attention settled on one particular desk. With the decision made, Li Hao took the ordinary invitation and slowly crossed the classroom. He stopped beside someone whose head rested at a desk, then placed the letter down with deliberate gentleness. The valuable opportunity had found its recipient, but the classmate did not even look up. The ordinary invitation still lay before the sleeping recipient. Li Hao finally lost patience, raised one hand, and slammed the desk. Han Yijuo shot upright, wiped drool from her mouth, and stared at the surrounding class as if an earthquake had struck. Li Hao pushed the invitation toward her. Xiao Miao came over wearing naked jealousy and announced that Li Hao had ignored his own brother to bring Han Yijuo a huge opportunity. Han only rubbed her eyes, read the letter, and looked unimpressed. And Yijuo refused outright. Summer vacation was for sleeping, not working, and someone destined to become a beast tamer had no reason to report to a research institute. Xiao Miao nearly stamped through the floor. He had offered money for this chance, and she was complaining. Li Hao smiled and offered to return the letter himself, after telling Captain Han Qing that his daughter had rejected the institute. The threat landed instantly. Han Yijuo's defiance vanished. Rather than test how her father would react, she snatched the invitation back. The answer began with an ugly academic gap. Li Hao earned full marks while Han Yijuo could manage 30. Tutor after tutor quit within 3 days. Eventually, Captain Han Qing asked his straight-A godson to help, then transferred his daughter into Li Hao's class so he could watch over her. And Yijuo hardly needed protection. Behind the dark brows, large eyes, and dimpled smile of a friendly younger neighbor was a body already comparable to a primary beast tamer. Older delinquents once approached her with bad intentions. 2 missing front teeth later, 3rd middle school had crowned her the lowly war god. Federal admission offered 2 roads. The academic examination ranked students by their scores, much like the tests from Li Hao's previous life. The martial examination ranked them by combat power. Han Yijuo had almost no hope on the first road, but real potential on the second. That was why Li Hao chose her. Giving Han Yijuo the institute position fulfilled his godfather's request to care for her, but it also put her near knowledge that might strengthen her before next year's martial examination. He kept that reasoning to himself. Explaining it to her would only waste breath. Xiao Miao finally admitted he would probably be too lazy to attend anyway. His father planned to take him to city number 2 to watch exotic beast fighting skills. Li Hao rolled the 3 Alliance gold coins in his palm and sighed at the freedom of wealth. When Zhao offered to buy the invitation after all, Li Hao told him to get lost. By the time Li Hao reached home, night had fallen. He opened the door expecting an ordinary evening and found Captain Han Qing's entire family waiting with his parents. Han Yijuo had already carried news of the invitation home, and the visit was plainly meant as thanks. Captain Han Qing sprang up, caught Li Hao with a heavy hand on the shoulder, and thanked his godson for finding Duo such a useful summer position. The force of the greeting nearly said as much as the words. Han Qing considered Li Hao's help a serious family favor. And Qing had not come with thanks alone. At the family table, he produced 2 objects tied directly to Li Hao's ambition, an old beast taming method book and an unhatched exotic beast egg covered in strange patterns. The room's easy warmth sharpened into attention. And Qing explained the obstacle first. Taming a juvenile or adult exotic beast required a beast taming method. An egg offered a second route. If Li Hao hatched it himself and dripped his blood onto it during hatching, the emerging beast could accept him without that method. And Han Qing made his intention explicit. The accidentally obtained egg was for Li Hao. Li Dajun immediately stood and refused. Du had not tamed any exotic beast herself. How could her father give this chance away before giving it to his own daughter? And Qing would not withdraw. Du was his daughter, but Xiao Hao was his godson, and even the academic examination still judged combat strength. At that weakness, the other adults exchanged worried looks. Han Yijuo kept eating, lifted her eyes, and calmly settled her own claim. Give it to Li Hao. She would enter public university through the martial examination. And Qing's determination did not waver, and Han Yijuo still showed no resentment. Faced with that calm certainty, Li Dajun finally sighed and nodded. Only then did Li Hao reach across the table and formally accept the patterned exotic beast egg and the yellowed ancient book. Before Li Hao could thank him, Han Qing planted a heavy hand on his shoulder. His message was simple. His godfather believed in him. Han Qing drained a toast to Li Dajun, and the long meal finally ended with both fathers thoroughly drunk. Back in his bedroom, Li Hao stopped suppressing the curiosity that had burned through dinner. He lifted the egg, fixed his gaze on its strange patterns, and waited. The familiar information window appeared with a name at last. Purple Gold Mysterious Bee. Several fields remained hidden. Current rank, race rank, and traits were all unknown. The visible lines were enough to stun him. Growth potential A rank, Lord rank, cultivation paths, bug type, and metal type. Li Hao tightened both hands around the egg, scarcely containing his excitement. Because it had not hatched, the missing details made sense. More importantly, successful hatching would make C rank Chieftain growth or even B rank Commander growth practically certain. If Li Hao nurtured it properly, the little life in his palms might one day reach A-rank Lord. As Li Hao stroked the shell, he felt the living aura inside and briefly imagined emerald-bright compound eyes. There was nothing repulsive in the impression. They seemed beautiful. He still did not know how to hatch the egg, but his summer post offered an answer. He could ask director Su Yusheng. Second gift looked far less cooperative. Age had blurred its writing, diagrams alternated with broken symbols, and only the character for method survived clearly on the faded cover. Li Hao appraised it anyway. The answer struck like thunder. Heaven and Earth Beast Taming Art. Grade, Heaven. Description deepened the shock. The first master of the Heaven and Earth Beast Taming sect, the Beast Taming Elder, had created it to control exotic beasts of different attributes. Rarer still, a controller could gain some of a controlled beast's abilities. In the cultivation era, everyone had known its name. And reality dragged his excitement down. Knowing the book's identity did not make its broken ancient symbols readable, and missing material still scarred the pages. But one appraisal image matched the outline of an empty section exactly. Omniscience was not merely describing the treasure. It could restore what the book had lost. Li Hao steadied his roller coaster emotions and began immediately. He copied the ancient book word by word. Whenever a character had faded or an image had vanished, he focused on that gap and supplied the missing content from Omniscience. Page after page, a complete version began to exist beside the ruined original. Dawn found Li Hao still at the desk. After a whole night of work, every surviving and restored character and image had been recorded in the new manuscript. He stretched, looked over the completed pages, and felt no fatigue at all. Translation was the only barrier left, and the school library could solve it. Li Hao rested for only an hour. Dark circles followed him through breakfast and into school, but his enthusiasm never dimmed. Because he ranked among the best students, homeroom teacher Chen Xiaoshan accepted his request to research materials and wrote the leave slip without pressing him for details. Li Hao plunged into the school library and began hunting through every source he could find on the cultivation era. Reconstruction had preserved the symbols, but preservation was not understanding. The ancient writing resisted him, turning his expected final step into a slow search through scattered references. Xiao Miao noticed the strange patterns on Li Hao's pages. His casual remark cut through the dead end. His family had ancient books connected to symbols like these. Li Hao looked up at once. If Xiao Miao was right, the key to translating a heaven-grade inheritance might be sitting inside his best friend's home. Xiao Miao's claim reached Li Hao at exactly the right moment. A full day among the library's ancient script references had produced less than 1/10 of a translation. Yet carefree, Xiao Miao had never lied to him. Li Hao immediately abandoned the thought of waiting until tomorrow and demanded to know whether the Xiao family truly owned matching texts. Lead was real. Xiao Miao's father had shown him an ancient book inherited from their ancestors, though neither his father nor grandfather had deciphered it after years of study. Li Hao grabbed his friend's hand and asked to borrow it. Xiao Miao recoiled. His father treated that book like a treasure. Stealing it out would bring disaster down on him. Xiao Miao offered a safer compromise. He would photograph the original and send Li Hao the images, provided they never reached anyone else. Li Hao slung an arm around him and swore secrecy. Xiao Miao shoved him off with theatrical disgust and revived his grievance over Li Hao giving an invitation to Han Yiduo. The bargain still stood. Work that followed would have broken the patience of most students. Li Hao was different. In his previous life, years as an overworked corporate employee had trained him for all-nighters and numbing research. Now that endurance met a world with its own buried sequence of ages, including the lost cultivation era whose traces survived in ruins and scattered texts. Modern scholars had already recovered one major inheritance from that era, the federal traditional beast taming method. It could have served as Li Hao's ideal translation key, but it was the foundation of federal beast tamers' livelihood, and private teaching was strictly forbidden. Unless he entered Federal Public University next year, that route remained closed. Li Hao worked the hard way, searching his optical computer while matching every copied pattern against the day's notes. The process twisted through false starts, but the preface slowly took shape. By the time he understood 8 or 9/10 of it, only a few gaps remained. The victory was real, and so was the exhaustion dragging down his eyelids. Xiao Miao kept his promise and supplied the photographs. Li Hao's excitement made him say more than he intended, and he caught himself too late. Scratching his head, he claimed the research would merely improve his chances of entering Federal Public University. Xiao Miao curled his lip. He did not believe that excuse, but he chose not to press his friend. Lunch ended, Xiao Miao left. Only Li Hao and a dozing old librarian remained. The photographs were enough to confirm that the Xiao family's book truly came from the cultivation era. Its characters suggested a record of ordinary daily life rather than a grand inheritance. For Li Hao, that was no disappointment. Everyday language could still provide priceless missing comparisons. Li Hao printed the photographs through the library's optical computer and focused his omniscient appraisal on the sheets. A description appeared at once: ordinary paper, generally used for writing with no special features. Li Hao stared at it in disbelief. Of course he knew it was paper. He had asked about the ancient object captured in the image. Useless answer clarified an important rule. Li Hao's so-called omniscience could identify a physical object before him, but it could not reach through a photograph or image to inspect the thing represented there. Without the Xiao family's original book in his hands, there would be no miraculous appraisal. The shortcut had closed as quickly as it appeared. Li Hao sighed, but he did not discard Xiao Miao's work. The ability could not appraise the pictured book. His own eyes could still compare its characters. The photographs remained a reference, nothing more and nothing less. He spread them beside the reconstructed art and returned to the slow undertaking, flipping rapidly through library materials for every matching pattern. The old man who had seemed to be dozing was not as oblivious as Li Hao assumed. His attention settled on the strange writing. Li Hao was surprised that a school librarian could recognize cultivation-era characters, but quickly found a harmless explanation. The era was publicly known, and an elderly scholar might naturally have studied its script. Li Hao smiled and called it nothing more than random research. The old librarian answered with an enigmatic smile of his own. Then he asked why the manuscript looked like a rather good beast taming method. Every hair on Li Hao's body lifted. Cold raced down his back, and one drop of sweat slid from his temple. The stranger had seen straight through him. For an instant, a sharp light flashed in the white-haired librarian's eyes. Then it vanished. He waved gently and told Li Hao not to be nervous. He had only noticed the boy scratching his head over the strange manuscript and come closer out of curiosity. Li Hao forced down the turmoil in his chest and watched without answering. His defenses surprised the elder. This was far too much caution for an ordinary 15-year-old student. The old man reasoned that a thief would not approach openly, especially under the library's surveillance. And the elder said he should demonstrate his strength. Jet-black liquid slipped from his lowered sleeve, glossy as ink beneath the ceiling lights. It spread slowly across the library floor, surrounding both men before Li Hao could decide whether to run. The ink rose and sealed them inside. Its outer surface turned transparent and vanished from the library's view. To Li Hao, however, it felt like sinking into the deepest sea. Pressure crushed down from every side until his legs failed and he collapsed into the viscous darkness. Li Hao recoiled from the bright eyes in the ink, and cold little hands caught him from behind. A petite, featureless figure gently supported his back. At the elder's amused warning not to frighten the student, Xiao Miao blinked, nodded, and helped Li Hao upright. Xiao Miao puffed out its tiny belly and patted it. The whole ink sea rushed back like a receding tide, vanishing into that petite body. Clear library light returned. Xiao Miao then hopped into a small black water ball on the elder's shoulder while the crushing pressure disappeared completely. The elder chuckled that, if he and Xiao Miao meant harm, Li Hao would not still be standing. Li Hao finally exhaled, but admitted they had terrified him. Anti-Federation Beast Tamers had once infiltrated schools in City Number 24. An unknown expert appearing on campus was not something he could dismiss. Instead of retreating, Xiao Miao approached Li Hao and settled into his palm. Qin looked genuinely surprised. Lively as Xiao Miao was, it normally kept its distance from strangers. Li Hao quietly focused the Eye of Omniscience. The rank it revealed explained that crushing power and placed Xiao Miao's owner at least at the master level. Once he was sure Xiao Miao posed no danger, Li Hao tapped its forehead. The little ink ball swayed beneath his finger, joy sparkling in its eyes. Curiosity overcame the last of his fear. He poked again. Xiao Miao swayed again until Qin laughed aloud at the ridiculous rhythm. Qin finally returned to the point. The pages looked like an extraordinary beast taming method. With concealment now pointless, Li Hao said he had copied them from an ancient book obtained by chance. He had deciphered only 70 or 80% of the preface. Several stubborn characters remained beyond him. And asked whether Li Hao knew what he had done before becoming a school librarian. Li Hao already had an answer. The Eye of Omniscience had exposed Xiao Miao's rank, and that beast had barely shown its full strength. Without revealing how he knew, Li Hao judged the elder to be at least a master-level beastmaster. Librarian finally revealed himself as Director Qin Yuyang, a retired authority from the City Number 15 Exotic Beast Research Institute. More importantly, he had specialized in cultivation-era literature. That was why he recognized the method at a glance. Li Hao's eyes widened. Of all people to meet beside these unfinished pages, he had found the exact expert he needed. Li Hao remained in the school library with Xiao Miao resting in his palm. His transmigration, the Eye of Omniscience, the internship invitation, Han Qing's egg and ancient method, and now Qin's exact field of expertise all seemed linked. Coincidences belonged in books, but this was becoming excessive. Qin broke the silence with a question. Did the boy want to make a deal? He would translate the cultivation-era patterns. If he could recover the entire text, Li Hao would let him borrow the original ancient book. The elder's burning interest made clear that access, not ownership, was his price. Li Hao could not decide immediately. Qin merely crooked a finger. Xiao Miao obediently hopped from Li Hao's palm to the elder's shoulder. Qin said he would remain in the library for the next few days. The boy could return whenever he chose. He had no intention of forcing him. Caution was survival in a world of extraordinary powers. Li Hao remembered City Number 24, where anti-Federation agents had used exotic beasts to impersonate teachers and nearly tear the city from federal control. Qin could kill him instantly, but overwhelming strength did not prove an identity. Li Hao quietly messaged Cheng Yudong. Cheng's affirmative reply released the tension in Li Hao's chest. Before approaching Qin, he gathered the heaven and earth beast taming art material and carefully put away the Zhao family photographs he had promised not to expose. Then he crossed to the entrance and respectfully called, "Director Qin." Qin opened one eye and playfully asked whether Li Hao had decided. Li Hao nodded. Qin would keep the manuscript, check several difficult patterns against his old notes, and expected to finish in about a day. Li Hao was to bring the original ancient book the next afternoon so Qin could verify the translation. And Qin delivered the real appraisal. This method could make even a master-level beastmaster jealous. It was a hot potato. Li Hao already knew its grade through the Eye of Omniscience, yet Qin had recognized its extraordinary value from the preface alone. The elder's scholarship was every bit as deep as promised. Qin narrowed his eyes and exposed Li Hao's precautions. Sections had been removed, and the surviving material was out of order. Li Hao had designed exactly that trap so no reader could reconstruct the complete method from his notes. His surprise became satisfaction. He truly had found the right translator. Qin teased him for having so many schemes at 15. Li Hao proposed exchanging optical computer contacts. Once home from school, he would send the correct manuscript order. Qin agreed that translating incomplete, scrambled fragments could introduce errors. With the channel established, Li Hao entrusted the working pages to him. Qin's final warning changed Li Hao's estimate. The heaven and earth beast taming art was not merely unusual, its grade might surpass most modern methods. A powerless student carrying such wealth would become everyone's target. Federal interests could work through quiet pressure, while anti-Federation agents would have fewer restraints. Li Hao had lived 2 lives. He understood that wealth could make an innocent person guilty. He answered seriously. Once Qin finished translating the original, Li Hao would hand the ancient book to the government. Qin's expression relaxed. The boy understood the stakes, and the elder promised to keep his secret. Qin Yuyang had one final concern. A priceless method in the hands of a student without strength or backing was not fortune. It was an invitation to disaster. Once Li Hao firmly repeated that he would not greedily keep it, Qin put away the reconstructed manuscript and waved him out of the library. Li Hao returned for the day's final lesson, then walked out of 3rd middle school beside Xiao Miao. At home, Hao Chunmei questioned him about his studies over dinner. He gave ordinary answers, used studying as his excuse, and finally withdrew to his bedroom, where his far less ordinary future waited. Inside its cardboard box, the purple-gold mysterious bee egg was alive. Through the thin shell, Li Hao could just make out an unfinished embryo twitching in a steady rhythm. Acting on an impulse from his previous life's knowledge, he crossed the outer city for a soft, warm lamp and positioned it carefully above the egg. Satisfied that the egg was stable, Li Hao retrieved Captain Han Qing's ancient book from beneath his bed. He photographed the original preface page by page, restored the proper order, and sent everything to Qin. The reply came quickly. Had Li Hao himself filled in the book's missing patterns and text? The question gave him an immediate headache. Li Hao searched for a safer explanation, and for anything else the optical network could teach him about the cultivation era. The result was disappointing. Public records were far too scarce. With a frustrated stretch, he admitted that he would have to depend on Elder Qin's translation after all. His hand clipped the forgotten plate. The juicy northern fruit rolled across the desk, flooding the open ancient book. Li Hao swore, snatched it up, shook it gently, and pressed tissues over the soaked pages. At least the optical computer was waterproof. Once the desk was clean, however, the book's damp back cover felt strangely different. Texture was not water damage alone. Beneath the back cover, Li Hao felt a thin, deliberate layer. Surprise sharpened into excitement. He took a utility knife from the corner of the desk, traced the concealed edge with painstaking care, and opened the interlining. Something flexible had been hidden inside the ancient book all along. Silk contained the real heaven and earth beast taming art. Better still, its writing was familiar to Li Hao, Chinese characters from his previous world. Its author had also transmigrated, but into the distant cultivation era. Across an age and an entire world, Li Hao had found the work of someone who had once stood where he stood now. Predecessor's explanation reframed the entire world for Li Hao. Spiritual qi existed here, and a beast taming method was a form of cultivation. It did not grant the impossible feats of old fantasy novels. Its true purpose was subtler. Establish a contract link with an exotic beast, joining human and beast through a connection of minds. An average method created only a weak link, limiting both cultivation and control. Higher-grade methods joined the two sides far more deeply. Through them, a beast tamer could even receive part of an exotic beast's abilities. Li Hao immediately understood the implication. The method he chose would shape not only his beast's growth, but his own power. Talent still mattered. Two people using the same traditional beast taming method might stop at entirely different ranks. Yet the predecessor's conclusion was uncompromising. The method determined the upper limit. To create this art, the transmigrator had combined miraculous texts remembered from a previous life with the traditional method and several higher-grade methods obtained in this world. Familiar Chinese characters raised a new question. Li Hao knew what they meant, but what did this world know about them? Acting on that curiosity, he selected only a few characters and sent them to Qin. It seemed like a harmless test, especially compared with revealing the silk itself. Qin was deep in translation when the interruption arrived, and his first reaction was annoyance. He picked up the optical computer, ready to scold the sender. Then he saw Li Hao's characters. Qin froze. The device slipped from his hand and struck the floor with a clatter. One phrase escaped him: sacred script. After one stunned heartbeat, Qin scrambled down, recovered the optical computer, and typed with trembling hands. The reply that reached Li Hao was no calm scholar's explanation. It was an alarmed demand. Why do you know the sacred script? Sacred script? The phrase made Li Hao pause over his optical computer. He could almost picture Qin panting on the other end. Keeping his own alarm out of his voice, Li Hao cautiously asked whether Qin meant the few characters he had just sent. After several deep breaths, Qin stopped typing and called him directly. His first words were an interrogation. Where had Li Hao seen those characters? Caught off guard, Li Hao stammered out a cover story about a traveler who had once shown him a strangely written book. Qin did not forget their bargain. Li Hao had promised to let him examine the classic containing a top-tier beast taming method. In exchange, Qin would explain the characters. Sacred script, he said, had first been found carved into an age-worn stone tablet inside a cultivation-era ruin. Qin tested him next. When had beast taming methods appeared? Li Hao correctly answered that the traditional system was defined about a century into the technological age. Before then, Qin explained, people did not tame exotic beasts. They enslaved them. The sacred script discovery belonged to the turning point that followed. That history was not freely available. Qin warned that the federal government, great families, and powerful organizations guarded sacred script thoroughly. Almost none circulated outside their control, and only a tiny number of people could even recognize it. Li Hao's harmless-looking sample was anything but harmless. Qin admitted that his cultivation-era research gave him only a superficial grasp of sacred script. More importantly, federal prohibitive clauses barred him from translating it for Li Hao. If law enforcement caught him interpreting those characters privately, even an elderly master-level researcher could be sent to prison. Li Hao still struggled to believe the danger was that extreme. Qin answered with a wound more than a decade old. One prize student had found a bamboo slip bearing sacred script and studied it privately. While Qin was away from city number 15, federal law enforcement took the student. He never came back. Qin urged him to surrender anything connected to sacred script at once. Unease tightened in Li Hao's chest. The silk hidden inside the ancient book's interlining contained the authentic heaven and earth beast taming art, and the authorities could never be allowed to trace it to him. He needed to separate what he would surrender from what he must keep. Li Hao's answer was characteristically cautious. When the time came, Qin could turn in the ancient material for him. The old researcher immediately saw through it. Li Hao wanted him standing at the front, where Qin's reputation and expertise could absorb the government's first scrutiny instead of a 15-year-old student. Qin laughed and accepted anyway. He would turn it in when the time came and try to secure a reward for Li Hao. Li Hao thanked him with impeccable respect. Qin answered by telling the troublesome kid to get lost 3 times, then ended the call so he could return to his literature and data. Li Hao spread his hands, dropped back onto the bed, and released a long breath. He had muddled through. But the scare left one rule sharper than ever. His transmigration and the Eye of Omniscience could never be exposed. Not to Qin, not to the government, not even to the people closest to him. Now he took stock. First, the Eye of Omniscience could identify exotic beasts and items. Second, the hidden silk held the authentic heaven and earth beast taming art. Third, the purple gold mysterious bee egg possessed a growth limit at the Lord level. Anyone would stun an ordinary student. Li Hao had all 3. Path seemed almost impossible to derail. He would cultivate the heaven and earth beast taming art, use omniscient appraisal to guide his choices, and hatch the purple gold mysterious bee. Then, 1 year from now, he would win admission through his own effort and step fully onto the road of a beast tamer. Yet mere admission was not the limit of what Li Hao wanted. This second life had given him too much and shown him too much danger to settle for an ordinary future. His answer burned clear in the darkness, strong. He would become strong enough to do what he wanted to do. The vow Li Hao had made in the darkness would not let him rest. A fire seemed to burn in his chest. At last, he sprang from the bed, drew out the hidden silk bearing the heaven and earth beast taming art, and sat cross-legged. If strength was the answer, he would begin tonight. Calmed his mind and reached for the energy described by the art. The response was immediate. Whether the cause was the method, his talent, or the strange advantage of transmigration, Li Hao suddenly felt suspended in a boundless space filled with drifting bubbles of red, green, blue, yellow, and countless mixed shades. Silk gave order to the spectacle. Red was fire. Green was wood, blue was water, and yellow was earth. Light blue, deep yellow, and other mixed shades marked further variations. This was not decoration. Every color represented an elemental force that could shape a beast tamer's future path. Most of the bubbles were transparent and colorless. This was basic, attribute-free spiritual energy, the crucial medium through which humans formed links with exotic beasts. The better the beast taming method, the more efficiently it could absorb this invisible energy. Li Hao had not merely found power. He had found the bridge to his future companion. Mesmerized, Li Hao touched the colorless bubble. It burst beneath his fingertip, and its energy answered his cultivation method. Guided inward and refined, that first current joined the gathering force inside him. A small vortex began to turn, the newborn core of a beast tamer's cultivation. The art also explained how that power could nurture an exotic beast. One path was to feed it materials carrying special attributes. The other was to absorb the world's energy, refine it, and transmit it through the bond. The beast tamer became a relay, so the borrowed elemental force would not linger long in the human body. Li Hao recognized the novice's trap. First-time cultivators, dazzled by the colors, often absorbed too much elemental energy and stained their new vortices. The longer those colors remained, the harder they became to remove. His own curiosity had already drawn in a few stray wisps. Specialist could deliberately keep one attribute and focus on beasts of that element. Li Hao had chosen no such road. The silk advised maintaining purity until the decision was certain, so he patiently separated the colored wisps from his newborn vortex. After several attempts, the last trace came free. Neither elemental nor attribute-free energy could simply remain in a human body. Both met a slight rejection and had to be refined through the beast taming method. Li Hao kept the purified vortex turning and completed the process correctly, but the effort accumulated behind his eyes. Power had answered him and already demanded discipline. Mechanics of creating a link were not difficult. Acceptance was. A domesticated juvenile whose spirituality had not matured could usually be reached with relative ease. An adult beast had years of accumulated energy and a will of its own. The higher its grade, the greater its spirituality, and the harder it was to tame. One scholar had measured that growing spirituality through intelligence. An E-rank common beast was comparable to a 1- or 2-year-old child, driven mainly by instinct. A D-rank leader-class beast could think like a child between 3 and 8. Even at the lower ranks, taming was already becoming a negotiation with a mind. C-rank chieftains and B-rank commanders could reach the intelligence of a 12-year-old, depending on species. At A-rank lord class and above, a beast's mind could rival a normal adult's. That was why high-grade adults were so difficult to tame, and why people risked their lives to obtain powerful beasts before they hatched. Purple Gold Mysterious Bee had not even hatched, so it possessed none of an adult lord's formidable intelligence. Li Hao followed the silk's instructions and extended his refined spiritual energy toward the egg. The true test was not whether he could make contact, it was whether the life inside would accept him. Life inside accepted him. The connection settled into place and an answering feeling crossed it, vitality, closeness, a presence that no longer seemed distant behind the shell. Li Hao stared at the egg in wonder. Beast taming was more magical than he had imagined. He could actually share feelings with an exotic beast. Li Hao activated the Eye of Omniscience. This time, 2 new entries appeared, hatching progress 75%, intimacy 100%. The first number meant 1/4 of the process remained. The second was even more reassuring. The unhatched bee already regarded him as its closest person. Betrayal was no longer a concern. Successful session had left Li Hao's head heavy, so he returned to bed. Tomorrow after school, he would try another spiritual energy feeding and see whether the progress rose faster. If he could hatch the Purple Gold Mysterious Bee soon, he might join the City No. 7 Beast Research Institute beyond the walls during summer vacation. With that possibility ahead, he finally rested. Li Hao's first night of true cultivation ended in exhausted sleep. He had no idea that, thousands of miles from City No. 7, the death of the fox-masked stranger was already stirring 2 powerful forces. One reckoning waited in City No. 1. Another was gathering near City No. 37. Beneath the City No. 1 Church of Light, Martin Russ and Dylan Dougal had just returned from their long pursuit. They did not rest. They went straight into a hidden, gloomy chamber and laid the fox-masked man's corpse before their superior. The body had returned. The stolen sacred item had not. Slimmer Knight was Martin Russ, a great master-level beast tamer and 5-ring knight. His voice trembled as he accepted blame, but shame outweighed fear. Beside him, burly Dylan Dougal was only an advanced beast tamer and 3-ring knight. He could barely speak. Sweat covered his forehead as he pressed himself toward the floor. Andre stood over them, a majestic middle-aged man whose golden hair caught what little light reached the chamber. His fury centered on the intolerable result before him. 2 trained knights had killed the thief, yet the treasure he cared about most was still missing. Neither subordinate dared rise without permission. Russ could offer no useful identity. Fox carried no clue tying him to a known organization beyond the mask itself. Worse, he had destroyed his own face so thoroughly that the Federation database was useless. He did not appear to be a registered Federation citizen at all. The dead man had prepared to remain nameless. Andre frowned and paced the chamber 7 or 8 times while the knights stayed on their knees. Then he decided Fox had to be connected to the anti-Federation organization. The investigation would continue until the sacred item was recovered. This was personal. Possession of that treasure could determine whether Andre became a candidate for the next pope. Russ now understood that this was no ordinary relic. Andre also understood how to bind frightened men to his cause. He finally let both knights rise, then produced a document from inside his clothing, the opening chapter of the church's light beast taming method. It was a gift now, and a promise of greater reward if they succeeded. Reward did not lessen Andre's private rage. Once the knights were gone and the underground chamber stood empty around him, his roar echoed through the gloom. Somewhere outside his reach, the sacred item threatening his ambition remained missing, and City No. 7 was still the only place the broken pursuit had led. Near city number 37, the Hengduan Mountains held a sprawling camp of tents. In the largest tent, silent, sat a burly, black-haired man with arms like stone pillars. A white tiger slept beside him, enormous enough to occupy nearly half the tent. Then a panicked teenager burst through the curtain, clutching a letter. A message had returned from Fox. Wanjun quieted the teenager with a gesture and asked whether the message came from Fox. It had carried back by Fox's exotic beast. The messenger handed it over, saluted, and withdrew. Wanjun opened the letter at once. The farther he read, the worse his expression became. Then he reached for his personal optical computer. About 15 minutes later, 11 more people filed through the tent curtain. With Wanjun, 12 leaders now crowded around the sleeping tiger. A beautiful woman among them demanded to know why they had been called so urgently. Wanjun scanned every face before answering with restrained sadness. Fox was very likely dead. The announcement broke the room's discipline. Fox was supposed to be their best at preserving his own life. One leader demanded to know whether the church had sent a high-level punishing knight, or even a cardinal, to kill him. Whatever had happened, Fox's final message left them with the same urgent problem as the church. The sacred item had to be found in city number 7. Wanjun revealed the scale of the plan. He had personally sent Fox to infiltrate the city number 1 Church of Light and steal its sacred item. The treasure's power was meant to help the anti-Federation organization take another Federation city. If the Hengduan Mountains had not become so tense, Wanjun would have gone to city number 7 himself. Because he could not abandon the Hengduan Mountains, Wanjun asked the other 11 who would go to city number 7 in his place. No one answered quickly. The tent fell silent for 5 full minutes. They all understood that recovering the treasure meant walking into the Church of Light's search, and perhaps into the path of its strongest enforcers. At last, a thin, middle-aged man with a gloomy face stood. His presence carried a quiet melancholy, but his voice was light and steady. He would go. City number 7's population would make the search difficult, yet for the sake of their plan, he judged himself the most suitable person for the mission. Wanjun did not accept immediately. He warned old Su exactly what the mission could mean. A high-level punishing knight of the Church of Light might be waiting in city number 7, perhaps even a cardinal. Su only smiled. No problem. His calm answer ended the argument. Wanjun saw no point in trying to dissuade him. The assignment settled, the 12 leaders left the tent one by one. Federation News knew every one of them as wanted chiefs of the anti-Federation organization. Their leader was Tiger King Wanjun, a saint-grade beast tamer. The man now bound for city number 7 was Snakehead Su Wuming, a master-level beastmaster. Li Hao knew none of it. He did not know that the Church of Light and the anti-Federation organization were both reaching toward city number 7. He did not know that the fox-masked man had left him a genuine opportunity, or that the same opportunity carried enormous danger. For now, Li Hao simply slept, waiting for morning. Morning reached city number 7, and Li Hao remained unaware of the hunters moving toward him. After cultivating the heaven and earth beast-taming art, he had slept exceptionally well. He dressed, checked that the purple-gold mysterious bee egg was unchanged, packed the yellowed ancient book, and hid the authentic Chinese character silk against his body. Chunmei noticed the difference immediately. Smiling, she told Xiao Hao that he looked exceptionally energetic. Li Hao credited a good night's sleep, then asked about his father. His mother set down breakfast and explained that Li Dajin had worked the night shift and had not returned. Li Hao ate, said goodbye, and hurried out. Sun had barely appeared, yet 3rd Avenue was already bustling. Li Hao slipped through the crowd with startling ease. His body felt lighter, his legs stronger, and fast-moving pedestrians seemed almost slow to his sharpened eyes. A trip that normally took more than 20 minutes ended in just over 10. Li Hao was the first student in the classroom. Sitting alone, he tested the changes more carefully. His thoughts were clearer and his strength had risen a little. The increase was negligible beside true beast tamer power, but Li Hao did not dismiss it. Small gains accumulated, and cultivation had only just begun. Before Han Yiduo reached him, Li Hao sensed someone enter. He could not identify her, but a blurry figure formed in his mind, creeping behind him like a thief. When she lunged to scare him, Li Hao turned first and startled her instead. He chuckled at her resentful stare, then hid the truth behind an excuse. Her footsteps had been too loud. Seats filled as class approached. In the final seconds, Xiao Miao rushed in, travel-worn and panting, then accused Li Hao of disloyalty for refusing to be late with him. Li Hao answered that he had arrived half an hour early. When Zhao joked about academic first place, Li Hao warned him to study. If Zhao failed finals, the Summer Research Institute placement would leave no time for tutoring. When Li Hao reached the school library, Qin Yuyang had already prepared a file for him. Knowing the old scholar became absorbed in research, Li Hao did not interrupt. He opened the bag himself and found several sheets covered in this world's writing. Qin had translated Li Hao's manuscript in a single night. Li Hao compared the pages line by line with the heaven and earth beast taming art in his mind. The similarity reached 90%. That result genuinely surprised him. Qin was no fame-seeking pretender like some experts from Li Hao's previous life. The old man truly deserved his standing as a leader in cultivation-era textual research. silk recorded the art in Chinese characters. Qin's pages rendered it in the language of this world. That difference made the translation more valuable, not less. If Li Hao verified the two versions against each other, he might derive an even more complete beast taming method. He settled in to examine every line. About an hour later, Qin finally spoke. Holding the yellowed ancient book, he asked why the back looked as though something was missing, and why the stains were new. Li Hao knew exactly what had drawn his attention. The authentic silk had come from that back cover interlayer, and Qin had noticed the disturbance. Li Hao did not deny the obvious stain. He told Elder Qin that he had accidentally spilled fruit juice on the back cover the previous night. Then he added the crucial lie: he had touched nothing else. The silk remained hidden against his body, and Li Hao had no intention of revealing it, even to this trustworthy old scholar. Li Hao then made the safer part of his plan explicit. Once Qin finished translating the ancient book, he wanted the old man to submit it to the federal government on his behalf. Li Hao had no desire to keep carrying such a hot potato. The valuable secret would stay with him. The conspicuous original would enter official hands through Qin. Qin Yuyang accepted. He promised that every cent of the government's reward would reach Li Hao, and that he would keep the entire matter confidential. Those terms removed both financial uncertainty and the danger of public exposure. Li Hao bowed deeply. Calling himself Qin's junior, he thanked Elder Qin in advance. Yuyang waved away Li Hao's deep thanks. Translating the ancient text had benefited him too, he said, so their arrangement was a win-win. Li Hao knew the complete art was already hidden on his silk, but Qin's willingness to help still moved him. The old man truly was warmer than his stern face suggested. During the remaining school hours, a practical mystery bothered Li Hao. City number 7 had plenty of Beast Tamers, yet their beasts were rarely visible. With an hour and a half left before dismissal, he emailed Qin. The old man paused his translation only long enough to reply, "Come to the library after school." When classes ended, Li Hao declined Xiao Miao's invitation to walk home, shouldered his bag, and returned alone. Qin's desk had nearly vanished beneath documents and research materials. The visible evidence of the old man's effort made the coming answer feel less like casual advice and more like instruction from a true expert. Qin's answer overturned the premise of Li Hao's question. Tamed beasts were not normally left roaming beside their masters. Guided by a beast taming method, a cultivator used the elemental spiritual energies of heaven and earth to construct a subspace within the body, a small internal world made specifically to accommodate exotic beasts. The process began with cultivation. Once someone comprehended a beast taming method, the world's different elemental energies became perceptible. A tiny spiritual energy droplet formed at the chest. With deeper cultivation, that droplet could grow into a pond, then a lake. Once enough energy accumulated, it could be used to construct the internal world. Not every internal world was equal. A higher grade, more sophisticated method created a broader and more solid space capable of housing stronger beasts. A shallow method produced something narrower and weaker. Even with the same art, Qin added greater cultivation depth meant a larger, sturdier world. Li Hao silently grasped the advantage hidden in his heaven-grade inheritance. Li Hao then asked how many days introductory mastery usually required. Qin's answer was measured in months, not days. Around half a year as a general benchmark, and perhaps 3 months for someone with better talent. Li Hao went quiet. The comparison exposed just how abnormal his own progress was, even if he could not tell Qin why. Staking the silence for premature overthinking, Qin told Li Hao to wait for the top-grade method's translation and concentrate on next year's major exam. Federal Public University treated promising Beast Tamers generously. Li Hao smiled. He was confident he could earn strong results, he said, and equally certain he would become an excellent Beast Tamer. Trace of gratification entered Qin's expression. Every one of his descendants had died in a beast tide, leaving him alone, and the confident boy before him suddenly resembled the grandson he had lost too young. Qin hid the ache behind a sigh and his usual brusqueness. He ordered Li Hao home and prepared to return to the Research Institute dormitory. Li Hao hurried home before sunset, devoured dinner, and disappeared into his bedroom. Only after locking the door did he draw the Chinese character silk from his clothes. Qin's lesson had given him the missing practical context. The authentic text supplied the operation itself. 10 careful minutes later, Li Hao found the method for opening a beast taming space. Li Hao sat cross-legged and sank into introspection. At his chest, the spiritual energy vortex turned slowly, the same structure born from his earlier cultivation. Now he followed the silk's instructions with deliberate care, directing his awareness and spiritual energy toward a second creation at the vortex's center. Not merely power, but a place where life could reside. Method answered him. At the center of the turning vortex, a separate internal space took shape and held. Li Hao's awareness reached into the newborn world. It was undeveloped, but it was real, and it belonged to him. The gold Qin had described only hours earlier had already become a stable part of Li Hao's body. Implications thrilled him. With enough spiritual energy, this place could be built into almost anything. But the present limit was just as clear. He had not absorbed enough elemental energy to create varied terrain. Li Hao adjusted his plan. He would wait for the purple-gold mysterious bee to hatch and begin absorbing elemental energy before deciding how to develop its habitat. Satisfied, Li Hao withdrew his consciousness. In introspection, the result was unmistakable. A transparent, colorless bubble rested at the vortex's center, unmoved by the spiritual currents around it. Opening that world had consumed an enormous amount of mental energy. Fatigue washed across his face. The moment he left introspection, he toppled backward and fell asleep. Li Hao had fallen asleep from sheer mental energy exhaustion, but his awareness did not simply go dark. A weightless pull carried him downward until his consciousness condensed into a body of spiritual energy inside the tiny world he had just opened. Startled, he wondered whether this was a dream. Accepting the impossible for the moment, Li Hao inspected his creation. It was barely half the size of his bedroom. Gray mist erased every distant view, and from the center he needed only 3 steps to reach an unseen boundary. His 4th step met resistance. Li Hao pressed a hand against the transparent boundary. It was not a hard wall. It yielded with a strangely soft texture, yet would not let him pass. The limitation clarified his next task. Only continued cultivation of the heaven and earth beast taming art could gradually expand this place. Satisfied with the inspection, Li Hao willed himself out. His spiritual body became a stream of light and floated upward while fresh drowsiness smothered his awareness. Only after he had vanished and fallen into deep sleep did a tender green seed enter the empty beast taming space, unseen by its owner. By morning, Li Hao tried placing the purple-gold mysterious bee egg inside his new habitat. The result was immediate. The space's spiritual energy was painfully thin, and through their link he felt the egg's displeasure. He withdrew it and accepted that the space needed improvement first. Li Hao settled the egg back into its small cardboard box lined with clothes. Then he changed into his school clothes, ate the breakfast Hao Chunmei had prepared, and left home. The extraordinary problem in his chest had to wait while an ordinary school day began. At the bottom of the stairwell, Li Hao found Xiao Miao already waiting. Proud of being early, Zhao tossed him a can of pastoral cow milk. Li Hao caught it and immediately teased that such competitive spirit in studying might earn the Zhao family another federal public university student. As they drank, the humblekin carried its own reminder of this world's tamed beasts. Pastoral cows were gentle, domesticated creatures raised for milk and meat. Zhao then turned serious. Finals were less than a month away, and he wanted to know how Li Hao's martial arts preparation was going. Zhao soon slipped back into complaining rather than planning. Li Hao had little sympathy for a wealthy friend who blamed everything except his own lack of effort. He offered one cheerful consolation. During the holidays, Han Yijuo would be at school tutoring alongside him. Zhao froze, then chased Li Hao down the road, cursing. Third middle school felt the countdown everywhere. Even at lunch, homeroom teacher Chen Ziyoshan kept the students in their seats reviewing subject after subject. Li Hao could not slip away to see Qin Yuyang until classes finally ended. After school, Li Hao refused Zhao's invitation to walk home and went to the library alone. The doors that should have been open were shut and locked. Disappointed, he wondered why Elder Qin had left so early, but remembered that he still had the old man's optical computer contact. At home, Li Dajun was off the night shift and had already poured a glass of liquor while waiting for dinner. Li Hao put away his backpack, washed his hands, and joined his parents. After one sip, his father asked about the ancient book and exotic beast egg Captain Han Qing had given him. Li Hao did not intend to hoard what he had learned forever. When the time was right, he would share the translated heaven and earth beast taming art with those closest to him. His parents, Captain Han Qing, and Han Qing's daughter, Han Yijuo. Caution determined the timing, not greed. Li Dajun hurried to make one principle unmistakable. If the federal government rewarded the valuable material, every bit of that reward had to go back to Han Qing. They could not profit from his property, and Han Yijuo would need substantial resources after passing the martial arts exam and entering federal public university. Li Hao smiled. Did his father truly think his perspective was that narrow? Before Li Dajun could recover, Hao Chunmei forcefully set a full rice bowl in front of him. Her displeased look said enough. Did he doubt his own son's character? Li Dajun scratched his head and wisely stopped talking. After dinner, Li Hao and his father made the rare effort of cleaning the dishes together. Then Li Hao returned to his room, locked the door, and opened his personal optical computer. The closed library still bothered him, so he sent Qin Yuyang a direct message. Elder Qin, didn't you come to school today? Still alone in his locked bedroom, Li Hao sat cross-legged and cultivated the heaven and earth beast taming art while awaiting Qin Yuyang's reply. Elemental energy gathered as the technique circulated. In cultivation, an entire hour vanished as quickly as a blink. In silence was unusual, so Li Hao called him. No one answered. A message arrived moments later instead. Do not bother the old man, wait until his work is finished. Li Hao scratched his head, guessed Qin was lost in another cultivation-era translation, and backed off. The hour had not been wasted. Following the ancient method, Li Hao had absorbed water, earth, wood, and other elemental spiritual energy. He drew the Hanzi silk from his chest and read beyond the instructions for opening a beast taming space. The next passage explained how to build one. Blueprint was surprisingly direct. Attribute neutral energy would support and expand the space. Earth energy would establish land. Water could become rivers, lakes, even oceans. Wood would grow plants and fill the habitat with life chi. With those principles understood, Li Hao began building. Earth elemental spiritual energy crossed from the vortex into the cramped internal space and condensed beneath Li Hao's spiritual body. Bare land took shape. He stepped on it several times, testing the surface. It felt no different from real ground. Astonishment broke into delight. This was not merely a pocket, it was a small world. Next came wood elemental spiritual energy. A thin green current entered the space, and tender grass pushed through the bare ground, breathing life chi into it. Li Hao had prepared extra wood energy for exactly this purpose. The purple-gold mysterious bee he meant to hatch would prefer a habitat rich with plants. And every blade withered at once. The wood energy stream bent away from Li Hao's intended path and plunged toward the center of the ground, as though something buried there had seized it. His confidence vanished. On his first attempt, a process he had believed harmless had become completely unknown. Li Hao instinctively tried to cut off the wood energy stream. He could not. The attraction from the center was far stronger than he had imagined, wrenching control away from him and drawing on the elemental power he had gathered. Wood and water energy fed the hidden presence while the strain rebounded through body and mind. Li Hao caught himself with both hands and dragged in breath after breath. Blood spilled from his mouth and nose. His eyes were congested red, his face pale and soaked in sweat, and the mental pressure was nearly as punishing as the physical damage. Weakly, he mocked himself. Perhaps this was what wuxia stories called qi deviation. After resting, Li Hao forced himself to the desk and wiped the blood from his face. If his parents saw him like this, the trouble would be endless. He discarded the stained tissues, dragged himself back to bed, sat cross-legged again, and deliberately sent his consciousness inward. He needed to know what had nearly killed him. The answer was waiting at the center. Where the unseen force had swallowed his energy, a lush green sapling now stood as tall as a person. When Li Hao's consciousness appeared, its branches and leaves rustled as if greeting him. Stunned, he wondered whether this tree had consumed all that wood and water energy. As Li Hao stared, the Eye of Omniscience activated. A familiar information box appeared over the sapling and supplied the name that changed everything: Undying Tree. Unique. The tender seed that had entered his space unnoticed was no ordinary plant. It was an extraordinary living fortune hidden inside his own body. And a warning surfaced from the depths of Li Hao's memory. A voice had once called this a great fortune, but said it was only temporarily entrusted to him. If he proved unable to bear it, its owners would come to his grave and reclaim it. Before the undying tree, wonder curdled into dread. Before the person-sized undying tree, Li Hao finally caught the memory that its name had stirred. The vague warning sharpened into a figure, a mysterious person in a fox mask, appearing as silently as a ghost. The stranger had casually tapped the body's forehead, spoken of fortune, entrustment, and reclamation at the grave, then vanished as a racing black shadow. The gesture had looked effortless. Its consequences were anything but. That same night, the body's original soul had inexplicably dissipated. Only afterward had Li Hao transmigrated into it. He could not prove the tree caused either event, but the timing made one question unavoidable. Had the fox-masked person placed the undying tree on him? Tree's appetite for wood and water energy only strengthened his suspicion. A person able to obtain an SSS-ranked mythical plant might stand at this world's pinnacle. If that power returned to reclaim its fortune, Li Hao possessed neither leverage nor protection. This world contained Beast Tamers who murdered and robbed to grow stronger. Li Hao needed to know whether losing the undying tree would kill him even before a thief did. Keeping its identity secret, he contacted Senior Cheng Yudong through his optical computer. Cheng explained that a plunderer normally severs the mental connection by force. Both the Beast Tamer and the stolen beast then enter a period of weakness. The stronger and more stable their connection had been, the deeper that weakness became, and the longer it lasted. Li Hao pressed her. Would the severance itself endanger his life? Cheng found the premise strange. Ordinary beast tamers survived even when their beasts died. But anyone filthy enough to steal a beast might simply murder its owner afterward and eliminate the problem. Relief slipped through Li Hao. Perhaps he could break the connection before the masked power came. Then Cheng added one exception: plant-type exotic beasts. Unlike mobile beasts, they lived rooted inside the beast tamer's own space. If a rooted plant beast were removed or died, the damage could reach the beast taming space itself and endanger its owner. Li Hao's relief vanished. The undying tree was not treasure he could hand over to save his life. Losing it might be the thing that killed him. Only two paths remained. Li Hao could inhibit the undying tree's growth and reduce the future risk, but restraint alone would never remove the threat. His real answer was strength. enough strength that neither the fox-masked person nor any companion could take the tree by force. Silence made Cheng ask why these questions had suddenly occurred to him. Li Hao hurriedly called them idle curiosity. She did not press. Instead, she asked about his coming finals and reminded him to greet Director Su when he reported to the City's 7 Beast Research Institute for summer vacation. After sending Cheng a thank you message, Li Hao turned his awareness inward. The sight awaiting him stole his words. The tender growth that had withered beneath the undying tree's ravenous absorption had returned to life. Li Hao bent and brushed the tender growth. An extraordinarily powerful life aura answered his fingertips. When he stared, the Eye of Omniscience supplied a name. Elementary Bud of Life, a tender bud created when the undying tree converted wood element spiritual power. Next entry widened the discovery. A Bud of Life could heal injuries. It could also slightly promote an exotic beast's evolution and advancement. Each use opened a different possibility, but Li Hao already carried the perfect injury on which to test the first. Bud of Life's power swept through Li Hao's battered body. In moments, the near-death damage disappeared so completely that no observer could have guessed what he had endured. Only the blood-stained tissues beside the bed remained as proof. Holding another bud, Li Hao stared and exclaimed, "This is simply heaven-defying." Still in his bedroom after the Bud of Life erased his terrible injuries, Li Hao studied the small green cluster in his hand. With the right sales channel, this much life force could become wealth, and wealth could keep his Beast Tamer path advancing even if that path was never smooth. One question remained. How could he test the claim that a bud promoted evolution and advancement when he had no hatched exotic beast? Then craving tugged through his bond. In the clothesline box, the purple-gold mysterious bee egg rocked toward the bud as if answering him. The idea was bold, but the resource was renewable. Wood element spiritual power could be converted into more buds through the undying tree. Li Hao therefore chose proof over hesitation, lifted the egg into his palm, and searched for a way to deliver life force through its sealed shell. Li Hao made himself the conduit. The bud's pure life force traveled through his body and into the hand supporting the egg. Some power was lost to his own flesh, but more than half crossed the shell. From inside came joy as intense as a desert traveler finding an oasis. When the creature stopped fussing, Li Hao set the egg down and summoned the Eye of Omniscience. The crucial number moved, 76, 77, 78, then stopped at 80%. One bud had raised, hatching progress from 75 to 80. The second effect was real. An egg becoming a larva was evolution in its most literal form. If one bud added 5%, 5 or 6 more should finish the job. Li Hao did not stop at theory. He counted 6 buds from the cluster, swallowed them, and prepared to send their gathered life force onward. The added life force drove the egg toward completion, but at 99% the advance became agonizingly slow. 99.1, then 99.2. The little creature hammered at the shell as if it could feel Li Hao's concern. He clenched sweaty fists and watched without blinking. Half an hour passed under Li Hao's fixed stare. At last, a hairline crack split the patterned shell. 2 delicate bee legs reached through, their metallic luster making them look slender and sturdy at once. They worked against the edge until the crack widened into a small opening. Small head followed. Emerald-like compound eyes caught the light while 2 antennae trembled, tasting the unfamiliar room. The juvenile wriggled until half its body was free. On its back, 2 pairs of transparent wings fluttered uncertainly, already trying to answer the open air. Hatchling gathered itself. Its hind legs pressed hard against the shell, and with one final heave the purple-gold mysterious bee pulled free. What had entered the night as an unhatched egg now stood in Li Hao's room as a living juvenile exotic beast. Li Hao opened his hand beneath it. The newborn's 4 wings vibrated. It lifted into a shaky first flight, crossed the tiny distance between them, and settled gently onto his palm. After all his anxious watching, the creature's first chosen perch was the hand that had fed it life. Now Li Hao could see it clearly. Though only a juvenile, it already measured 1/4 of his palm. 6 legs shone with metallic luster. 4 wings were thin as gauze, emerald compound eyes gleamed beneath trembling antennae, and a cold, bright stinger armed its tail. Longer Li Hao admired the small bee, the harder it became to restrain his smile. 1 juvenile stood on his palm, but in his mind, he could already glimpse a swarm surrounding him. Perhaps the undying tree was not a treasure he was destined to lose. Perhaps he could become strong enough to defend it. Patterned egg had finally hatched, and Li Hao could barely contain his delight. In one night, his future had changed twice. The tiny purple-gold mysterious bee carried A-rank commander potential, while the undying tree might one day reach the SSS-rank mythical level. Beast Tamer could sometimes borrow a bonded beast's specialties, so Li Hao opened the optical computer and searched insect-type examples. Ant bonds had produced tremendous strength. Beetle bonds could form exoskeletons. Other insects had granted regeneration, concealment, and stranger powers. B-type beasts stood out for sensory ability. That answer was useful enough to test. Li Hao offered the back of his hand, and the petite juvenile answered his intent, its two pairs of gauze-thin wings trembling as it prepared to fly. Bee rose, and the bond suddenly became more than emotion. Li Hao felt air streaming between its rapidly beating wings as if it brushed his own body. Then his viewpoint lifted. Through the juvenile's eyes, he could see the entire bedroom and his own body sitting motionless below. Convenience came with an ugly weakness. His breathing remained regular, but his body offered no reaction and no defense. Li Hao immediately warned himself that sensory sharing could never be used casually. A scout's vision meant little if an enemy could simply strike the Beast Tamer. Within the shared perspective, the juvenile felt like a tiny fighter jet and Li Hao its pilot. A thought sent it forward. Another drew it back, raised it, or lowered it. Every instruction was obeyed with a discipline that made the bee feel almost like an extension of himself. Li Hao sent the bee toward the door to test their connection. Just before it arrived, an inexplicable force ripped his consciousness away. The juvenile lost focus and dropped. 1 second later, its wings caught the air again, but the warning was clear. This bond had a boundary he did not yet understand. After recovering, Li Hao brought the juvenile into his beast taming space. The undying tree stood at its center, lush and person-sized. Possessing such a treasure would bring crises and trouble, but he could not call this beginning anything but fortunate. Li Hao stroked the undying tree and called the bee down onto one of its branches. The juvenile needed no persuasion. Drawn to the tree's dense life force, it folded its legs beneath itself and lay contentedly against the living green branch. Neither beast was intelligent yet. They possessed little beyond basic liking and dislike. That made Li Hao's test simple. Did either reject the other. When no hostility appeared, the tension left him. At least his first 2 inhabitants would not turn the cramped internal world into a battleground. And an emerald green drop slowly condensed on the branch. Li Hao's appraisal named it life essence, liquid containing the undying tree's purest life force, capable of greatly promoting an exotic beast's evolution. The peaceful introduction had just revealed a powerful new growth resource. Li Hao refused to drain the tree merely to force faster growth. Before the bee could act, he spoke firmly. The undying tree would be Xiao Miao. The purple-gold mysterious bee would be Xiao Zai. Xiao Miao could not give away life essence, and Xiao Zai could not consume life-rich substances without his permission. Xiao Miao's branches stirred beneath Li Hao's serious gaze, and Xiao Zai remained attentive on the branch. Their intelligence was simple, but they could feel his intent. With names, compatibility, and limits established, Li Hao's beast taming space had become more than storage. It was his first small household to protect and cultivate. Morning found Li Hao in surprisingly high spirits despite everything he had endured the day before. While dressing for school, however, he noticed something odd. His pants felt slightly short. Had replenishing all that life force actually made his body grow? He did not linger over the mystery. Li Hao ate breakfast as usual with Hao Chunmei and Li Dajun, said goodbye to both of them, and set off for Outer City No. 3 Middle School. This world still had weeks and school weekends, although every one of its 12 months lasted exactly 30 days. More importantly, the approaching summer vacation was no true holiday. For students like Li Hao, it became another form of study. Students choosing the martial exam would leave the city for nearby exotic beast habitats. 5 students formed each group, escorted by a retired City Defense Force veteran who had reached at least the intermediate Beast Tamer level. Reward justified the risk. Students who passed the martial exam and entered Federal Public University had a 70% chance of comprehending a beast taming method. Most became City Defense Force reserves. Those with superior aptitude could even enter the Federal Army. Academic exam students faced a different sorting. Average grades meant work at exotic beast farms. High grades could earn an institute internship. Fail the finals, and summer became hellish remedial school. Wealthy heirs could bypass both tracks through private family arrangements. In the classroom, Xiao Miao reacted to Li Hao's wish to leave the city as if his friend had lost his mind. Li Hao already possessed the summer position others wanted, yet he was considering danger. A gifted sophomore had died on exactly such a trip last year. Li Hao did not deny the death. He explained it. The route had been mapped for groups of E and D-rank beasts. No one could have predicted that a B-rank mountain-moving ape would intrude, and primate exotic beasts carried extreme hostility toward humans. In Li Hao's judgment, the team had suffered exceptional bad luck. A different B-rank beast might have allowed a retreat, and veteran leaders normally kept students away from truly dangerous territory. He understood the risk. He simply did not consider one disaster the whole equation. Xiao Miao rolled his eyes. Rare or not, staying in the city was safer. Then he offered a compromise. The Research Institute regularly sent teams beyond the walls to collect materials, and those teams traveled with far stronger protection. Xiao Miao's father had mentioned something even better. Director Su supposedly kept a master-level beastmaster beside him year-round. If Li Hao could accompany the director's collection team, he could leave the city under exceptional protection. Li Hao repeated the rank in disbelief. Before the coming physical test, Han Yijuo raised a hand and reminded Li Hao of his body's disgraceful record. Last time he had claimed illness, hidden in the school infirmary, and earned a 0. Her father had ordered her to supervise him, and she threatened to whip him if he fled again. Xiao Miao burst out laughing. Li Hao's face heated at the previous owner's so-called achievement. He had not committed that embarrassment, but for now he had to carry it. After a small cough, he promised that he had been training hard and would not escape this test. Xiao Miao immediately understood why Li Hao had been sending him home first. The kid had been training alone. He loudly demanded to see the results today. Li Hao told him to lower his voice and insisted he had always trained. Xiao Miao simply answered with a disdainful tusk. And Yijuo was simply pleased that her father would not need to order more supervision. When Xiao Miao asked how she could believe Li Hao so easily, she only chuckled, returned to her seat, and lay down to sleep. Li Hao declared the two equally hopeless. And the bell rang. Conversations broke apart, chairs shifted, and students streamed from the classroom in 2s and 3s toward the martial arts field. Li Hao went with them, carrying secret strength that Xiao Miao now expected him to prove. Bell carried Li Hao straight from the classroom into a much larger crowd. Outer City No. 3 Middle School had 10 second-year classes, and every one of them had gathered on the training ground. Li Hao stood with Class 1, still carrying the secret strength Xiao Miao expected him to prove. Principal Song Mulin, a kind-looking little old man, stood above them with a microphone and a smile that narrowed his eyes. Once the whispers faded, he announced his prize. After using every connection he could, he had brought staff from the Exotic Beast Research Institute to test all the second-year students. Song told the future martial exam students to find and repair their weaknesses. The academic exam students should identify the abilities that gave them an edge. This was not next year's decisive examination, but it was still a chance to close gaps, and part of the data would be folded into this year's final results. Nobody could dismiss it. Principal Song stepped down, and a burly teacher replaced him with a roster. More than half of Class 1 was called for the north side of Training Ground No. 1. Han Yijuo and Xiao Miao were among them. Li Hao remained with the academic exam students, separating from the two friends who had pressed him hardest about this test. Huge precision instruments waited for Li Hao's group. Chen Xiaoshan explained that Principal Song's connections had brought specialists from the City 7 Beast Research Institute. Their work went beyond studying exotic beasts. They could analyze a beast tamer's own abilities and produce detailed personal data. For ordinary students, access to that kind of testing was rare. Excitement erupted. Some students had heard ordinary beast tamers rarely received this analysis. Detailed results could make every later training session more targeted and perhaps improve their chances at Federal Public University. Li Hao saw another side of the opportunity. After cultivating the heaven and earth beast taming art and absorbing so much life force yesterday, even he did not know his actual limit. Should he truly go all out? And told the Institute's lead staff member that these students had chosen the academic exam, so their physical scores might be average. Then he left to instruct the martial exam group on the north side. The badge-wearing man introduced by the exchange was Director Zheng. With an easy smile, he promised that Director Su had ordered the staff to make every measurement as accurate as possible. As the line began moving, Yang Ling spoke quietly to Li Hao. She thanked him for helping her before. Li Hao had nearly forgotten and waved the debt away. Classmates were supposed to help one another. Gathering her courage, Yang Ling looked up with her large, watery eyes and urged him to do his best. Li Hao smiled, told her to do the same, and faced forward again. Director Zheng stopped the students before a huge upright target. The first test combined accuracy and strength. Red points would flash at different positions, and each student could punch, kick, or use any other method to strike them. The machine would judge how precisely the attack landed and how much force it delivered. At Director Zheng's call, staff member Cheng stepped up. A red point flashed. Cheng's fist snapped forward like the wind and struck it hard enough to make the target tremble. The readout came back at 92% accuracy and 300 kilograms. That was not an ordinary adult's strength. Cheng had recently become an elementary beast tamer and tamed an iron-armed ape. Director Zheng brought the numbers back to student level. For boys, 80 kilograms was excellent, 60 was good, and 40 passed. For girls, the lines were 60, 45, and 30 kilograms. Accuracy used one scale for everyone, 75% for excellent, 60 for good, and 50 to pass. The students answered together that they understood. First attempts quickly produced 3 names worth remembering. Qin Hao scored 80% accuracy and 81 kilograms of force. Yao Qingxiao reached 75% and 83 kilograms. Among the girls, Ciyu delivered 80% accuracy and 61 kilograms. All 3 cleared both excellent lines, giving this supposedly average academic exam group results worthy of the martial exam. Director Zheng found the result almost amusing. Those 3 were already around the middle level of martial exam students. He guessed they came from substantial outer city families. With family resources behind them, they could choose the safer academic exam path into Federal Public University without worrying about receiving fewer cultivation resources there. Their scores were not accidents. They reflected strategy and backing. And the staff called, "Next, Li Hao." He stepped forward and planted himself steadily before the test machine. The name changed Director Zhang's attention at once. This was the student who had accepted an invitation from Director Su's assistant, and Zhang himself had issued that letter. Now he wanted to see exactly what was so unusual about this middle school student. Director Zhang did not leave Li Hao's test to the staff. He strode over, patted the operator's shoulder, and took the analysis instrument himself. "I'll handle the remaining students. Go rest." Then he called Li Hao forward, making it clear that this attempt would receive his full attention. Li Hao had been weighing this moment before his name was called. The heaven and earth beast taming art had changed him, and he now commanded 2 low-ranked beasts with exceptional racial potential. But this was only a sophomore final, not the decisive exam. Showing everything would buy little and invite suspicion. 50% would be enough. Calmed his mind. The spiritual energy vortex in his chest spun, sending a thread of pure energy through the beast taming space to the newly hatched purple-gold mysterious bee. Sensory synchronization engaged. At once, the world seemed to slow. Tiny motions and shifting expressions became easy to follow through the bee's innate dynamic vision. Director Zhang tapped the panel. Instead of placing the red point on the chest, waist, limbs, or another convenient surface, he made it appear on the back of the humanoid target's neck. It was an awkward angle chosen for one purpose, to see what exactly made Li Hao special. To his borrowed perception, the opening looked almost generous. Li Hao pivoted and snapped a whip kick into the difficult point. The strike carried enough force for an excellent rating, but its precision was the real shock. Roughly 90% accuracy, achieved in an instant against a position no ordinary middle school student should have handled so cleanly. Score pleased everyone except Li Hao. He had aimed for 50%, yet his leg had released closer to 70. His strength had grown faster than his ability to measure it. That made the flaw obvious. Before the major exam, he needed serious work on coordination and fine bodily control. As Li Hao passed him on the way to the next venue, Director Zhang spoke just loudly enough for him to hear. "Student Li Hao, you hid quite a lot this time, didn't you?" Shock flickered through Li Hao's eyes. His restraint had not escaped notice. It had made the director more curious. Zhang had assumed Li Hao's theoretical brilliance explained the institute internship. Now the physical evidence contradicted that simple answer. Correcting for the awkward target, he estimated a full whip kick near 240 kilograms. The corresponding punch was already around 100, and Li Hao's unused reserve might push his real punch strength close to 120. Next revelation came from someone Li Hao had never considered physically imposing. Yang Ling's result appeared in Zhang's hand. 88% accuracy, 70 kilograms of force, excellent overall. The students and staff stared at her petite frame in disbelief. Red-faced under the attention, she hurried past Li Hao toward the second test. A retreat left Li Hao with a useful warning. A top-tier cultivation method and 2 beasts of extraordinary racial rank did not make him untouchable. This world was full of hidden talents. Several more students earned excellent first test ratings afterward, though none produced the same shock. Even Zhang surveyed the overall results and judged them merely average. Second station tested reaction ability, much like tests from Li Hao's previous life. Sensory synchronization made it easy for him, even while he restrained himself, and he secured another excellent. The same rating went to Yao Qingxiao, Yang Ling, and Si Yu. Qin Hao, despite his excellent first result, only barely managed good here. Reaction test also exposed talent the first machine had missed. Wu Xiaoxiao and Su Hankui had earned only good ratings before, but both now delivered eye-catching excellent performances. Their names began circulating among the institute staff. Yang Ling's surprise was no isolated accident. Different tests were revealing different kinds of strength. Li Hao counted the progress for himself. 5 tests in total, and the first 2 had both ended in excellent ratings. He had preserved some of his strength, confirmed the value of the bee's perception, and found a weakness in his bodily control. With those lessons in mind, he moved on toward the remaining physical tests. As the cohort moved on, Yang Ling stayed close to Li Hao without quite meeting his eyes. She softly congratulated him on earning 2 excellent ratings. Li Hao smiled and turned the praise back on her. No one had expected so much strength from someone with such a petite frame. They arrived with the crowd at the third test. To Li Hao, this endurance trial and the speed test still to come resembled the physical fitness exams of his previous life. The difference was the machine waiting at the center. It would test strength, stamina, and will under increasing gravity. Director Zhang ordered everyone into student number order. Inside the instrument, gravity would rise at fixed intervals, 10 kilograms per step for boys, 5 for girls. Each new level required 10 full seconds. The instant a knee or hand touched the ground, the attempt ended. Wang Lin went first. He had performed well in the earlier tests, but the rising field steadily stripped away his composure. By 70 kilograms, his eyes were bloodshot, his teeth locked, and every second demanded stubborn effort. Still, he survived the required count. Display jumped from 70 to 80. Wang Lin's legs immediately gave way. Before his knees could crash down, Director Zhang caught him and hauled him clear of the field. The verdict rang across the venue. 70 kilograms endured good. Now everyone knew exactly how unforgiving the next increment could be. Manhwa entered with a fire still burning from his merely good second test result. Instead of beginning at 40 kilograms, he asked for 60 immediately. Director Zhang warned that taking so much pressure at once could sabotage his later limit. Manhwa did not yield. He knew his own strength. 6 halos lit and 60 kilograms descended at once. Manhwa held firm. The field climbed through 70 and 80, surpassing Wang Lin's limit without breaking his posture. Even at 90 kilograms, he still looked capable of carrying more. His confidence had not been empty after all. At 100 kilograms, the change was immediate. Manhwa's breathing quickened and his one straight back bent. Manhwa caught the tiny loss of control at once. Manhwa had finally begun to struggle. Blood surged into Manhwa's eyes, veins rose beneath his skin, and he fought to straighten again. 10 seconds passed. The pressure rose to 110 kilograms, drawing amazed whispers from the students. Manhwa shut out every voice. Eyes closed and teeth clenched, he held one breath in his chest while blood crept from the corner of his mouth. His body swayed, yet still did not fall. Director Zhang knew another full 10-kilogram leap could make Manhwa collapse, so he ordered only 5. Manhwa endured 115 kilograms on will alone. Then, instead of accepting the result, he fixed his eyes on the operator and demanded another increase. The next command would bring the mountain down at 120. Manhwa stared at the operator, refusing to retreat from his demand. The operator would not risk that decision alone and looked to Director Zhang. After one tense pause, Zhang gave a slight nod. The command went in. The load climbed to 120 kilograms. New pressure struck like a mountain. Manhwa's knees folded, his back bowed, and he braced both hands against his thighs. Veins swelled across his arms and neck. He trapped one last breath in his chest as sweat and fresh blood ran down onto the instrument. Director Zhang had estimated Manhwa's limit at only 100 to 110. One mistake now could cause severe harm, so he watched for the first sign of failure. Around them, every student silently counted. 10 seconds meant success. Manhwa endured 13. The instant Manhwa reached his limit, Director Zhang shut the instrument down and caught him as he fell. Then came the verdict, 120 kilograms, excellent. Zhang wasted no time celebrating. He brought out a bottle of light blue life nutrient solution and carefully poured it into Manhwa's mouth. Yang Ling quietly supplied the numbers. An ordinary tube retailed for 5 federal gold coins. The Institute's version cost 6. In bulk, the ordinary product fell to roughly 4 gold and 50 silver, while the City 7 Institute still cost about 5 gold and 50 silver. Manhwa had not expected the timid Yang Ling to know the market so precisely. When he asked why, she kept her eyes down and worried the corner of her clothes. Her mother worked at the City 7 Beast Research Institute. Manhwa stayed calm on the outside, but inwardly he was delighted. If ordinary nutrient solution was already this expensive, the bud of life might let Manhwa accumulate capital quickly. But selling blindly would be foolish. First, he needed one tube to compare their effects. Only then could he estimate the bud's true value and choose an accurate price. The obstacle was money. Manhwa was still an ordinary middle school student with only 50 federal silver coins in monthly allowance. Even adding the 3 gold coins from Cheng Yudong's thank you gift left him well short of a single tube. He needed another way to obtain one. Once Manhwa was dismissed from the test area, Director Zhang repeatedly called the class back to order. The endurance assessment resumed, but nobody produced another shock like 120 kilograms. Manhwa's brutal success remained the standard hanging over every student who followed. Stronger students remained consistent across the tests. Yao Chengxiao reached 100 kilograms. Su Hankui managed 90. Among the girls, Siyu reached 80. All were respectable results, but after Manhwa's 13 seconds under 120, the class no longer treated them as astonishing. Director Zhang called Manhwa forward, and his voice carried unmistakable expectation. Few liberal arts students had earned excellent grades in both earlier events, and Manhwa's circumstances made him especially interesting. Manhwa drew a breath, settled on a decision, walked into the instrument, and signaled that he was ready. The instrument started gradually. Manhwa felt his body grow heavier, but the early pressure remained manageable. Up to 50 kilograms, he could still stand with relative ease. Once the load passed 50, however, each breath became heavier, exposing the weakness his recent gains had not yet erased. Manhwa understood the problem. This body's foundation had been poor for years. Even a top-tier method like the Heaven and Earth Beast Taming art could not produce a complete transformation overnight. Raw strength alone would not carry him much farther, so he turned inward to the spiritual energy vortex in his chest. Manhwa circulated spiritual energy through his body according to the Heaven and Earth Beast Taming art. As the current accelerated through his meridians, something unexpected happened. The instrument's displayed load kept rising, yet the pressure bearing down on him began to feel weaker. His test had changed. Inside the active gravity instrument, Li Hao kept the spiritual energy vortex at his chest turning. Energy accelerated through his meridians, and the crushing load strangely receded. The display still read 80 kilograms, but to him, it now felt like less than 60. 10 seconds later, another ring ignited. The load jumped to 90 kilograms, jolting Li Hao's circulation and slowing it for a heartbeat. Then the heaven and earth beast taming art forced the current through the obstruction, restoring its speed almost instantly. Director Zheng folded his arms and watched more closely. Adapting to another 10 kilograms in one breath was not normal, and Li Hao's beast taming method was clearly unusual. Offstage, Yang Ling reached the same conclusion. Her classmate was hiding secrets. Zheng's certainty came from a special exotic beast he possessed. Through its ability, he could see spiritual energy inside a human body. Beneath Li Hao's skin, delicate threads of spiritual qi crawled with astonishing precision, and Zheng could not understand why. The instrument reached 100 kilograms. Li Hao decided the moment had come. He bent his knees, lowered his waist, furrowed his brow, and deliberately thickened those hidden energy threads. Veins rose across his forehead, neck, and arms. To everyone else, he was reaching his limit. Students declared that 100 kilograms was already excellent and wondered whether Li Hao had taken drugs to earn 3 excellent scores. Eyes shut, he heard every word and rejoiced. The act was working. He pushed the performance farther, brought blood to his face, and let himself fall. Director Zheng lifted Li Hao and pressed white gauze to his bloody face. From the safety of Zheng's arms, Li Hao whispered that he had pushed too hard, had no strength left, and might miss the 4th test. Zheng stared at him, momentarily speechless. If Zheng could not see spiritual energy flow, the trick might have fooled him completely. Instead, he knew Li Hao had targeted the nutrient solution from the start. Even so, Director Su Yusheng had ordered the institute staff to spare no restorative needed to keep injured students testing. Zheng sighed, shook his head, and made the result official. Li Hao had endured 100 kilograms and earned an excellent score. Then he drew a vial of low-level life nutrient solution from his lab coat and stuffed it into Li Hao's waiting hand. His goal achieved, Li Hao broke into a smile. He removed the gauze, wiped away the blood, and quietly promised to repay Zheng at the original price when he visited the institute during summer vacation. Zheng rolled his eyes. The institute reimbursed the vial. Li Hao owed him nothing. Zheng told him to drink it, get out, and proceed to the next event. Li Hao chuckled, opened the vial, and swallowed the light blue solution in one go. His costly benchmark was no longer an unreachable purchase. He had secured it through nerve and control. Jin Hao wanted an explanation for Li Hao's sudden qualitative leap. Li Hao could hardly reveal the truth, so he claimed Captain Han Qing had taught him to cultivate. Qin considered that answer and completed the lie for him. Li Hao must have undergone an acquired breakthrough, just like Qin himself. Li Hao observed that Qin's scores already qualified him for the martial arts exam. Unlike Li Hao, he did not need the written route. Qin answered indifferently that his family had arranged it. With nothing more to add, the two boys turned toward Yang Ling, whose test was underway. Yang Ling completed the pressure test with another excellent result. By now, Class 1 and the institute staff were almost accustomed to being surprised by this quiet, unremarkable-looking girl. Almost. Each new success still drew another round of impressed looks. After 3 events, only 4 students had swept the board. Li Hao, Yang Ling, Yao Qingxiao, and Siyu. Qin Hao, Su Hankui, and Wu Ziaxiao followed with 2 excellent ratings each. The class now had a clear leading group, and one supposedly poor student stood inside it. When the final pressure test ended, Director Zheng led everyone to the 4th venue. This event was simpler, 50 meters testing explosive speed. Yao Qingxiao, Qin Hao, Siyu, and Yang Ling all earned excellent. Su Hankui and Wu Ziaxiao took good ratings. Different strengths reshuffled the field again. Li Hao no longer needed to impress anyone. He had obtained and consumed the nutrient solution he wanted, so he deliberately held back and scraped into good. Most classmates noticed nothing. Qin Hao's expression turned strange. Yang Ling looked confused. Yao Qingxiao and Siyu watched with open surprise. The 5th venue, Director Zheng reframed the stakes. Even students who never became Beast Tamers could be recruited by the federal government if their combat talent was strong. As technology advanced, institutes might also create weapons that let ordinary people fight exotic beasts. This final test measured that possibility. Each student would fight the robot alone. Last 2 minutes for good, last 5 for excellent. Time was not everything. The staff would judge overall performance as well. Worried whispers spread through the class until Director Zheng clarified the setting, not Beast Tamer strength, but an ordinary adult trained in real combat. Most students were wondering how to survive. Yao Qingxiao raised his hand and asked a different question. What grade would he receive if he defeated the robot? Director Zheng was not surprised. He answered with a smile, treating the challenge as bold but entirely serious. Wang Lin entered as the first clear demonstration of the test. The robot came alive and rushed him. Its metallic fist tore through the air toward his face. Wang Lin was ready. He shifted sideways at the last instant, and the straight punch flashed past his ear. Dodge was not an escape. The robot stopped its fist beside Wang Lin's head, opened the hand into a claw, and seized his shoulder. Its other hand locked onto the opposite side before he could counter. In one fluid chain, a missed punch became a two-handed grapple. And the robot exerted its strength. Wang Lin left the ground before he could react and flew toward the center like a kite with a broken string. He struck hard enough to be dazed. On ordinary ground, the impact could have broken several bones. The Institute's special surface absorbed the worst of it. Robot obeyed its safety logic. It would attack again only if Wang Lin stood. He panted, pushed against the floor, and tried repeatedly, but his body would not rise. Director Zhang assessed him, then nodded to an Institute worker. Wang Lin's attempt was over, and the waiting students finally understood the fifth test. The next student entered with results slightly worse than Wang Lin's. The moment the bout began, the metal robot rushed in and knocked them away with ease. Its control was exact, however. The student hit the arena without suffering an injury. Pattern repeated. A few students survived the fierce assault for more than a minute, but most bouts ended inside 30 seconds. With every failure, the student still waiting lost confidence. Even lasting 2 minutes for a good rating now seemed painfully distant. Director Zhang and the Institute staff showed no surprise. These were still young students. Real combat had come too early for most of them. The oppressive rhythm continued until Zhang finally called one name that pulled every eye back toward the arena: Yao Qingxiao. Yao had already warmed up and removed his top. He waited quietly at the boundary, then stepped onto the field without hesitation. The robot reacted at once, driving straight toward him and sending a metal right fist directly at his face. Yao did not flinch. He tilted his head by the smallest margin, and the metal fist grazed past his earlobe. Before the robot could recover, his left hand locked around its right arm while his other hand reached toward its neck. At the same time, Yao planted his right foot behind the robot and pulled with a sudden burst of strength. The coordination would have thrown a human opponent. Against the robot's crushing weight, it was not enough. The metal body refused to go down. Yao changed tactics and drove an almost full-power kick into the robot's left leg joint. The steel frame barely reacted. The recoil instead left his own leg numb. Retreating before it could pursue, Yao cursed inwardly and made his choice. If his secret was exposed, so be it. After several retreating steps, Yao stopped and settled into a strange posture. Faint waves began to radiate through the air around him. Director Zhang's composure broke into pleased surprise. Yao was circulating spiritual qi through the beast taming method and had hidden it even from him. Waiting students felt the faint waves as well. Li Hao stared harder. Yao had already cultivated the beast taming method. The posture and gathering aura suggested something more. Could a student their age already be capable of releasing a true martial skill? Without looking away for long, Li turned to Yang Ling and deliberately kept his voice low. Was Yao preparing some kind of move? Yang Ling, equally intent on the arena, quietly identified the posture for him. This was wind-breaking hand. Robot advanced again. Yao completed the circulation, committed to the attack, and released wind-breaking hand. Spiritual qi drove through the fierce strike. This time, the seemingly immovable metal opponent was forced backward, and the entire watching class erupted in shock. The spectators, an adolescent who had cultivated the beast taming method and mastered a martial skill, was nothing short of a genius. Yao alone understood the price. The forced strike had nearly emptied him. If the robot attacked again, he could only endure and fight for time. Before the robot could move, Director Zhang called across the arena. Yao's test was over and he could rest. The announcement caught Yao completely off guard. He had been preparing to bluff his way through the remaining time, not to be dismissed while the clock was still running. Yao protested that the time had not expired and insisted he could still fight. Zhang only smiled and reminded him of the rule. This test judged performance, not survival time alone. Yao had already shown enough. Still bewildered, he could do nothing but leave the arena. Waiting students surged toward Yao, eager to ask how he had done it. Li Hao did not join them. His attention stayed fixed on the now empty place where Yao had stood. Hanging there in his vision was the familiar shape of an appraisal information box. First line gave the technique its name, wind-breaking hand. The next classified it as an elementary martial skill, a fierce attack containing spiritual qi. At major achievement, the entry said that qi could become powerful enough to tear through raging winds. But the box held more than a description. A glowing figure moved slowly through wind-breaking hand, displaying the martial skill step by step. Li watched, fascinated. His appraisal ability had not merely named what Yao used, it had preserved a demonstration he might be able to study. Li immediately turned that discovery into a question for Qin Yuyang, messaging the elder about practicing martial skills. Qin's reply came back incredulous. The boy supposedly had not even begun cultivating the beast taming method, yet he was already thinking about martial skills. Li did not admit that he had already cultivated, much less that he had opened a beast taming space. He promised to explain when he collected Qin's translation, then ended the exchange with a convenient truth. His own test was approaching. Message sent, Li refocused on the arena. After Yao Qingxiao's display, the other strong students squeezed out nearly everything they had. Qin Hao endured the metal robot for roughly 3 minutes through sheer innate power. Si Yu used agile footwork to last about 2. Su Hengqi and Wu Xiaoxiao fell somewhat short of her mark. And director Zheng called Li Hao. Li moved quickly to the arena, removed his top, and gently set his personal optical computer beside it at the boundary. With his belongings safely outside the field, he stepped into the dirt beneath the gaze of the waiting students. 3 excellent results in the first 4 tests had transformed Li from a notorious poor student into an upper echelon contender. Qin Hao, Yao Qingxiao, and the other academic exam students were especially intent. His scores from last semester had been disastrous. Now they wanted to know how far his sudden rise could go. Li paid no attention to their speculation. He advanced slowly, calmly studying the metal opponent and turning over his own plan. Director Zheng glanced toward the operator. Commands flashed beneath flying hands, and the dormant test machine began responding. Li turned fast and fixed his eyes on the robot. The spiritual energy vortex in his chest accelerated, sending power into his hands. The machine had one order: defeat him as quickly as possible. Its strength and speed matched an adult's, but the staff had given it no martial skill. Instead of fear, Li felt an unfamiliar excitement. The robot sprang into the air and drove a metal fist toward his chest. Li clenched his reinforced fist and punched upward to meet it. Metal and flesh collided, and with spiritual energy behind him, Li fought the adult strength machine to a draw. Collision was only the first layer of the attack. Through sensory synchronization, Li caught the second punch before it arrived. He immediately withdrew his first fist. His other hand opened from a fist into a palm, changing the angle while the airborne robot still lacked room to adjust. Li's palm struck before the robot could change posture. The machine flew backward, slammed into the arena, and threw up a cloud of dust. The result was unmistakable. Li had not merely resisted the metal opponent. He had used its airborne commitment against it and knocked it down. Boundary erupted. Beautiful. Well done. Li was only the 3rd student after Yao Qingxiao and Qin Hao who had dared to meet the robot head-on. Yet this exchange looked different. He had converted that collision into a clean knockdown, giving his competitors even more reason to stare. Robot's command did not allow hesitation. Once its backward momentum was checked, it attacked again. Li welcomed the pressure. His real goal was larger than a test score. He wanted to discover whether martial techniques from his previous life could combine with this world's spiritual energy and become a unique martial skill. Among the old styles he knew, Taijiquan was the natural choice. Baijiquan and Wing Chun were famous, but Taijiquan had been the most convenient for self-cultivation, and it was the method Li had practiced most. If any familiar framework could teach spiritual energy to redirect force, this was it. Robot arrived before the puzzled crowd could understand his posture. It planted its left foot, drove power through its right metal leg, and swept toward Li's shoulder. This was not a light probe. The machine committed adult-level force to a strike that had already overwhelmed another strong student. Li crouched slightly and secured his horse stance, lowering his center before the impact. Spiritual energy gathered along both arms. He crossed them above and below, then made a small hop at the instant the metal leg struck. The reinforced guard caught the sweep instead of opposing it as a rigid wall. Sweep's immense force still shifted Li sideways, but that movement was part of the answer. Because he had prepared his stance and lowered his center, the blow displaced him without knocking him down. Raw strength traveled through the guarded frame and spent itself in lateral motion. Watching students were dumbfounded. From outside the arena, Li's defense had looked almost effortless. They had seen this exact sweep knock Qin Hao down, yet Li possessed neither Qin's physique nor his raw strength. Technique had just produced a result their ordinary comparison could not explain. Even Director Zheng's eyes widened. In his experience, simply blocking such a violent sweep should have demanded a martial exam student's strength, and should still have left that student in a miserable state. Li Hao had taken it cleanly, stayed on his feet, and turned a familiar-looking posture into something the arena could no longer dismiss. The robot did not pursue after its sweep. Its metal head trembled, its eyes flickered, and its core calculated the impossible result. Li Hao could not be defeated quickly. For the first time in the bout, machine and student held their ground and waited. Li Hao understood the balance just as clearly. Taijiquan had let him redirect force and survive a blow he could not overpower. It had even put the robot on the ground. But leverage was not victory. With his present strength, he had no answer for that steel body. Robot finally stepped forward, but no longer rushed. It advanced slowly and steadily. At the sideline, Director Zheng hugged the roster to his chest and hid a smile, delighted that an initial model machine could teach these future Beast Tamers how formidable technology had become. And the robot settled into a stance. Li Hao's eyes widened. The angle of its limbs, the measured feet, the deliberate approach, it was displaying the same Taijiquan he had just used. His experiment had worked well enough for the machine to learn from him. Li Hao gritted his teeth and watched those feet. Spiritual energy flowed from the vortex in his chest into his legs. He lowered himself, waited for one metal foot to rise, then exploded sideways like an arrow toward the side that should have been hardest for the robot to cover. The computational core had already found that route. The descending foot stopped dead. The robot twisted at the waist, drove that suspended leg onto Li Hao's path, and powered its right fist toward his face. In one mechanical sequence, the opening became a trap. Sensory sharing let Li Hao see the change immediately, but not escape it. He spun the spiritual energy vortex and reinforced both arms for the punch. Just before contact, the machine stopped again. Its fist opened, lifted over his guard, and crashed downward while he hung helplessly in midair. Force drove Li Hao straight into the dirt. Dust burst across the arena and swallowed him from view. Once he was pinned, the robot withdrew its hand and stood upright, leaving the watching students able to see only its blurred metal silhouette. Director Zheng removed the exhausted student from the arena, but Li Hao's curiosity survived the beating. Learning that newer combat robots could contend with C-class exotic beasts made his eyes widen. If enough machines existed, he reasoned, might they even stand against a B-class beast? Zheng dismissed that fantasy. Second- and third-generation combat robots could not be produced at will. Every unit needed a computational core and an energy core, and a machine strong enough to face a C-class beast required an energy source made from at least a B-class exotic beast core. Cores were only part of the problem. The components themselves were extraordinarily difficult to manufacture, making mass production impossible. City number 7 possessed exactly one combat robot capable of contending with a C-class exotic beast. Li Hao's imagined army collapsed to a single irreplaceable machine. Zheng still believed the technology mattered. Its present level was insufficient, but perhaps one day machines could replace the humans sent onto battlefields. The hope was not an army City number 7 could build now. It was a future that research might eventually make possible. That future demanded astronomical funding. Yet rebel organizations had grown increasingly active, forcing the major cities to spend most of their income resisting them. Only a tiny fraction remained for scientific research. Combat robot progress was slow not for lack of promise, but because humanity's present enemies consumed its future. Li Hao listened without interrupting until Zheng delivered him to the Class 1 students who had finished testing. Still exhausted, he recovered his discarded top and personal optical computer, dressed again, and returned to the classroom. The moment he reached his desk, the long day finally dragged him into sleep. Still drained by his battle with the test robot, Li Hao slept at his classroom desk until a hand gently patted his head. He lifted his face and rubbed the sleep from his eyes. Xiao Miao stood over him, openly suspicious that an ordinary written exam student could possibly be this exhausted. Li Hao ignored the teasing and scanned the room. Most of their classmates had returned, yet Han Yijuo's place was conspicuously empty. His sleepiness tightened into concern. He turned back to Zhao and asked why she had not come with him. Concern transformed Zhao instantly. He seized Li Hao by both shoulders, furious that his friend had missed the spectacle. According to him, Han Yijuo had challenged the steel fifth test robot with her bare hands and smashed it. Li Hao, remembering how hard that metal body had been to hurt, could only stare. Zhao admitted that smashed was dramatic, but the truth was scarcely less absurd. Han had dismantled, almost dismembered, the machine with ease. Even inner-city advanced schools rarely produced results like that. Chen Xiaoshan had laughed until his face wrinkled, and an ecstatic institute researcher had taken Han away with Chen accompanying her. Once reassured about Han, Li Hao asked how Zhao had performed. Zhao had earned 3 goods and 1 excellent. Then Li Hao quietly gave his own result, 3 excellents and 1 good. The neat reversal erased every word from Zhao's mouth. He simply stood there, staring at the friend he had just mocked for sleeping. While Zhao searched for a reply, Qin Hao addressed Li Hao. The Academic Affairs Office had ordered every sophomore with 3 excellents in the first 4 tests to assemble at number 1 training ground. Qin and Yao Qingxiao had noticed Li Hao sleeping through the broadcast, so they had come back specifically to collect him. Li Hao pushed past the dazed Zhao, stood and thanked the two. Yao waved the gratitude away. They were classmates. As the qualifiers prepared to leave, Zhao sank into Li Hao's seat and muttered that Li must have taken drugs. Li Hao and Yao burst out laughing, while Qin struggled to preserve a dignified expression. Before the 3 could go, a timid voice asked whether she could join them. They turned to find Yang Ling, the petite academic exam student who had excelled throughout the tests. Li Hao, Qin, and Yao exchanged no debate. All 3 nodded. Yang fell in beside them, leaving Zhao even more astonished than before. 5 events had run simultaneously across 3 training grounds, consuming most of the day. The larger martial exam group had taken longer and moved straight to number 1 training ground upon finishing. Li Hao's group crossed the campus to join them, entering a venue reserved for students with at least 3 excellents in the first 4 tests. 4 found the Class 1 martial exam students and settled among them. More qualifiers continued arriving from every sophomore class. Only when all 10 classes were represented did the movement finally subside. The day had separated them across different tests. Now their shared results had gathered them before one podium. Principal Song Mulin walked slowly onto the podium, and the crowd quieted around him. He cleared his throat and raised a thick folder. The sophomore physical fitness assessment was complete, including this year's newly added 5th event. But the institute had not yet finished analyzing that experimental test. First 4 results, however, were already in Song's hands. He judged this cohort stronger than last year's sophomores and told them many had real hope of reaching Federal Public University. Then his tone changed. He had another announcement, one important enough that every student should reconsider the future. The university was no longer their only option. Federal students, the major exam in Federal Public University had always defined the road ahead. Confusion spread through the training ground. Song did not prolong it. Only yesterday, after discussion in the Federal Council, City No. 7 had approved a proposal allowing the Exotic Beast Research Institute to recruit outstanding high school graduates directly for training. The announcement struck so hard that No. 1 training ground became silent enough to hear a pin drop. Li Hao and the other qualifiers stared toward the podium. The Exotic Beast Research Institute was not a minor alternative school. Its name alone implied a path even narrower and more coveted than the university route they had pursued all their lives. Moment later, silence exploded into chaos. Students shouted the news back at one another. The institute was recruiting, and it would train outstanding graduates directly. If entering Federal Public University was a grade difficult, this new path was S-grade. Li Hao had awakened expecting only the results of a long test day. Instead, the shape of his future had just changed. As the training ground's uproar rolled around him, Li Hao measured the new offer against the future he had already chosen. His original plan was simple: enter Federal Public University, become a Beast Tamer, and grow strong. Power would let him protect the warm little home he had found in this life. It would also let him leave the shelter of City No. 7 one day and properly see how vast this world truly was. There was also the undying tree seedling hidden inside his beast taming space, a treasure so extraordinary that it was effectively a ticking time bomb. The fox-masked stranger's warning remained engraved in him. Without sufficient power, there could be no true freedom. Federal beast tamers guarded humanity's cities, and Li Hao considered that duty noble. Yet their mortality rate remained above 50%. Beast tides were only one threat. Rebel organizations hunted them too. That was why his mother, Hao Chunmei, had always opposed this dream. Li Hao had already crossed the threshold of beast taming through the heaven and earth beast taming art, a method superior to the federal standard. But private cultivation was not enough. The optical network could not replace systematic instruction, and learning as a mercenary would demand blood. As the announcement faded, a formally dressed, spirited elder walked to the center of the platform. Students recognized Old Man Qin from the library, and then realized he was Qin Yuyang, deputy director of the Exotic Beast Research Institute. Qin found Li Hao in the crowd and smiled. Qin wasted no words. The institute's standards would be stricter than federal public universities, and it would recruit fewer people. Even among these qualified students, competition would only become more intense. This was not an easier substitute for the university exam. Reward matched that difficulty. Anyone admitted to the institute's training ranks would receive resources beyond the student's imagination. For Li Hao, who needed strength without exposing every secret or gambling his life as a mercenary, that promise immediately changed the calculation. Then Qin removed the offer's greatest apparent sacrifice. The institute had reached an agreement with Federal Public University. Its trainees could enter and leave the university freely and receive a university education at the same time. Li Hao would not have to surrender his original goal. Nor would the institute dictate what came afterward. A graduate could remain there as a researcher, enlist as a federal beast tamer, or work independently as a freelance beast tamer. The difficult admission did not lead to a cage, it led to options. Qin added one final material advantage. Students would pay no fees, and every resource used during their studies would be free. The qualifiers erupted at once. Voices repeated the words in disbelief. For students accustomed to measuring every opportunity against its cost, it sounded like fortune falling from the sky. Behind Qin, an ink giant revealed only a fraction of its true form. Li Hao recognized it as the spirit of the ink sea. Its pressure descended like a massive boulder, suppressing every excited student. In an instant, the roaring venue became exceptionally quiet. And the giant's two lively eyes found Li Hao. The terrifying body collapsed into a fist-sized water ball, bounced happily from the platform, and landed on his head. Qin called, "Xiao Miao," in helpless protest, but made no move to stop it. Under everyone's gaze, Li Hao gently lifted the spirit of the ink sea from his head. Xiao Miao immediately burrowed into his arms, its bright eyes full of delight. Qin straightened his expression and continued as though his overwhelmingly powerful companion had not just chosen Li Hao as a cushion. Chin made the distinction clear. The institute emphasized exotic beast research and technological development. Federal Public University emphasized the students' own strength. Institute trainees would also receive new research results first. The question was no longer which school was better, but what kind of future each student wanted. Chin told them to think carefully. Would they study quietly behind the lines or go to the battlefield and shed blood? Most had never truly asked what they wanted to become. They had only followed the crowd. Li Hao had asked, and the institute had just given him a new answer to consider. Chin ended his challenge with one final clarification. He was only the messenger. Neither his authority nor the institute's reputation could choose a future for these students. Research or battle, institute or university, the final decision and its consequences belonged to them. The institute had no reason to beg for applicants. Its name rivaled Federal Public University, and after the final exams, graduates would compete to enter. Yet Chin had left out one crucial number. No one knew how many students the institute would actually admit. With that, Chin said everything that needed saying. He asked them to consider carefully and choose a path they would not regret. Then he waved for Xiao Miao to follow and stepped down from the platform, leaving the unresolved question behind him. Before Xiao Miao could leave, a tender green bud appeared against Li Hao's supporting palm. While the surrounding students looked elsewhere, he quietly pressed it into the creature's liquid body. It was a private gift, offered with no idea how dramatically it would change his situation. Xiao Miao knew exactly what Li Hao had done. The pure life force inside the bud made its huge round eyes brighten with delight. It blinked at him as if sharing a secret, then bounced happily after Chin with the precious sprout still hidden inside. The assembly ended, but the speeches did not produce an instant answer. The students carried different possibilities back with them, and the familiar prestige of Federal Public University still weighed heavily. Li Hao returned to Class 1 without knowing that his small farewell gift had already created a far more urgent decision. Away from the students, Xiao Miao produced the green bud for Chin to inspect. Through their telepathic bond, it confessed that Li Hao had slipped it the gift. Then, before Chin could keep it, Xiao Miao formed an ink-black hand, snatched the bud back, opened a mouth in its round body, and swallowed it whole. Large bubbles rolled through Xiao Miao's ink-water body. It opened its new mouth and released 2 small burps, and its color deepened. Chin froze. Then he seized Xiao Miao, checked it again and again, and reached an impossible conclusion. One tiny bud had advanced a beast whose progress had been stagnant for nearly 20 years. Miracle carried an immediate threat. To a Beast Tamer, anything that could promote evolution was a divine treasure, certain to attract competing powers. If Li Hao possessed such a resource without the strength to defend it, discovery would not make him rich. It could dig his grave. Chin moved at once. Chin reached second-year Class 1 before the lesson had ended. Standing in the doorway with unusual severity, he called Li Hao outside. Homeroom teacher Chen Xiaoshan recognized the old director immediately and offered no obstruction. One wave sent Li Hao after him beneath the curious gaze of the entire class. Chin led Li Hao quickly to the library. There, Xiao Miao expanded around them, its ink-like liquid becoming a broad water curtain that sealed the 2 men away from outside ears. Chin assured Li Hao they could now speak safely, but his expression made clear that this was no ordinary conversation. Li Hao finally asked what was wrong. Chin answered with a demand. Where had that sprout come from? He warned Li Hao not to hide anything. Li Hao glanced resentfully at Xiao Miao, realizing his delighted recipient had exposed him, then searched for an excuse and found none that could survive Chin's scrutiny. Li Hao chose the truth, at least the part Chin needed. During the days Chin had spent translating the ancient text, Li Hao had followed the preface he previously researched and almost by accident completed a cultivation session. That success had allowed him to tame a plant-type exotic beast. Li Hao manifested a branch of the undying tree seedling, then returned it to his beast taming space. When he opened his other hand, several tender green buds lay across his palm. Chin's breathing quickened. Even Xiao Miao, now standing like a small person nearby, stared at them with naked longing. Once he steadied himself, Chin asked the decisive question, could Li Hao's plant produce these life force sprouts? Li Hao nodded. He called them buds of life, and this was not their first success. The purple-gold mysterious bee had been catalyzed and hatched with the same resource. Chin stared at Li Hao and asked whether he had given a bud of life to anyone else. For a moment, he barely seemed to breathe. Li Hao shook his head. The secret was dangerous beyond anything the boy had understood, but for now it had spread no farther than Chin and Xiao Miao. Still enclosed within Xiao Miao's water curtain, Chin finally released a breath. Then he gave Li Hao the first and most important rule. The fewer people who learned that his plant-type beast could produce buds of life, the better. The bud did not hold a vast amount of life force. That was not its miracle. Its energy was so easy to absorb that even some A-rank and S-rank materials could not compare with it. Ordinary life force resources became harder to absorb as a beast's rank rose. For a lord-level existence like Xiao Miao, even 50% was extremely rare. Yet Xiao Miao had absorbed roughly 80% from Li Hao's bud. Qin called the result inconceivable. If such a resource entered the market, Qin warned, it would cause an uproar. Li Hao had been waiting for a chance to sell one. Now cold sweat ran down his back as he imagined powerful factions tracing the bud straight to its renewable source. Fortunately, Li Hao had not sold one casually. Qin offered to become his intermediary and negotiate on his behalf. Li Hao considered the proposal, then told Elder Qin to continue. Qin valued a single bud of life at no less than roughly 200 Alliance gold coins. An auction might drive the figure even higher, but chasing the highest bid would also put the miracle before far too many eyes. The problem was their foundation. There were only two of them. Qin might be a master-level beastmaster, but before certain major forces, he said, he was no different from an ant. Federal law alone could not guarantee restraint once the production method became known. With only Qin and Li Hao involved, anyone investigating the buds could follow the vine straight to the root. Qin therefore wanted Su Yusheng to place the city's 7 Beast Research Institute between them and the market. Su would take a share, but his name could provide a shield. Li Hao did not hesitate. The size of their profit was secondary. What mattered was selling the buds safely and discreetly. Qin smiled with relief. The boy understood the principle that kept valuable secrets and their owners alive. One question remained. Why was Qin so sure Su Yusheng would cooperate? Qin answered by returning to Xiao Miao. The advanced lord had been trapped at the same bottleneck for nearly 20 years, while the needed advanced materials lay scattered through dangerous human forbidden zones. O-level materials normally offered Xiao Miao almost nothing. Li Hao's bud was different. Its usefulness did not fade as a beast's rank increased. One bud had already loosened Xiao Miao's rock-solid bottleneck. To any expert studying stalled evolution, that result was sweet dew. Qin sent for Su, and Xiao Miao kept the library hidden behind its water curtain. Roughly an hour passed before a human silhouette finally pressed through the flowing barrier. Visitor demanded to know why old Ghost Qin was acting so mysteriously. It was Su Yusheng, director of the City 7 Beast Research Institute. His silver hair was meticulously combed. Though slightly hunched, he walked with steady confidence in simple, spotless clothes. Qin merely said he had something to show him and signaled Li Hao with his eyes. Understanding at once, Li Hao approached respectfully and offered a bud of life with both hands. Su accepted it, still suspicious. As Su studied the bud, suspicion vanished. The hand holding it began to tremble. His breathing quickened, and the disciplined director's bright eyes burned with excitement. Without looking away for long, he snapped at Qin and demanded to know where it had come from. Qin did not answer. He only tipped his chin toward Li Hao. Su forced down his agitation, drew a breath, and addressed the young student more carefully. Where had he obtained this bud? Li Hao answered plainly. His exotic beast had produced it. The words struck like a thunderclap. Su's eyes widened at the 15-year-old before him, and his hard-won composure collapsed again as he surged forward and caught Li Hao by the shoulders. Su finally noticed that he was still gripping a 15-year-old by the shoulders. Embarrassment crossed his face. He released Li Hao, coughed into one hand, and rebuilt his dignity with a gentler voice. Had Li Hao truly said that his own beast could nurture more of these buds? Under that scorching stare, Li Hao gave one restrained nod. It was enough. Su looked back to the tiny green sprout in his hand, no longer treating it as one miraculous specimen, but as the first sample of a resource that might be produced again and again. Su's excitement rested on expertise, not guesswork. The bud did not hold an overwhelming amount of life force, but that power was extraordinarily easy to absorb. From years of studying beasts and materials, he judged that even an advanced beast should retain roughly 60%. Qin corrected him without ceremony, not 60. Xiao Miao could absorb as much as 80%. Su's head snapped up. He warned his old colleague not to speak nonsense, but Qin met the challenge with a stern glare. This was far too important for a joke. Su studied Qin's stern face, Li Hao's restrained nervousness, and the bud between his fingers. Then the pieces aligned. The treasure belonged to the student. Qin had summoned him because they wanted the Exotic Beast Research Institute to stand between Li Hao and the people who would buy it. Who also knew who Li Hao was. Cheng Yudong had already drawn his attention to the student, a fact that surprised Li Hao far more than he showed. Before Su could turn that familiarity into leverage, Qin cut in. Connections could wait. First, they would discuss business, and Su would not use a relationship to lower the price. Asked for his available supply, Li Hao closed his eyes and looked inward. Inside his beast taming space, a small patch of land was crowded with tender green buds. There were more than 100. It was wealth, leverage, and danger concentrated beneath the branches of Xiao Miao. Li Hao understood the value of leaving himself a way out. He opened his eyes and answered with practiced certainty. He had about 20 more. The lie did not end the negotiation. It set a safe ceiling on what the other men could expect him to surrender. Su asked how quickly the beast's energy could create replacements. Li Hao supplied another conservative number, 10 buds in 1 week. Qin glanced at him. He had recently seen a cluster of at least 40 or 50, and Li Hao had not practiced the mysterious method for long. The real output was plainly higher. Su offered 120 federal gold coins for each bud. He also understood why they had come to him personally. The Institute's name could conceal the public source, but Su himself would be another barrier between Li Hao and anyone determined to trace the resource backward. Qin judged the offer a little low, but still within reason. The difference bought discretion, institutional cover, and Su's personal involvement. He gave Li Hao a confirming nod and accepted the initial transaction on the boy's behalf. This first sale would favor safety over extracting every possible coin. Acceptance did not make Qin relax. The theft of important technology was still fresh in his memory. The Institute's public identity could shield Li Hao, but its own halls might contain people serving other factions. Su must not pass a single bud to another researcher, no matter how respectable that person appeared. Su's expression turned equally serious. He would keep the samples under his own control, conduct the research himself, and personally formulate the reagent. There would be no second researcher. In return, Qin and Li Hao also had to guard every trace of the bud's origin. One careless disclosure could destroy every layer of protection. Details took roughly half an hour to settle. All the while, Xiao Miao's ink-dark water curtain held around the table. Inside, 3 people negotiated a resource that could attract powerful factions. On the library's surveillance feed, the same room appeared perfectly empty. Their first defense was already working. At last, Su took 3 buds of life. At 120 apiece, Li Hao's first protected sale brought 360 federal gold coins. But a middle school student had no federal account of his own, so the payment had to rest temporarily in Qin's account. With the transaction settled, Li Hao noticed that Qin still seemed burdened by something. The question escaped before he could reconsider it. Why was Elder Qin helping him this much? The old man turned in surprise. Prices and secrecy were easy subjects. This one was not. As Qin looked at him, Li Hao seemed to overlap with another figure in the old man's eyes. Moisture clouded that gaze. Li Hao had lived 2 lifetimes. He knew grief when it surfaced and understood that some answers should not be forced out. He let the question remain unanswered. Qin sighed, looked away, and rubbed at his eyes as if dismissing the whole moment. "Forget it," he muttered. Then his voice hardened with an urgency deeper than instruction. Li Hao had to work hard. He had to become stronger. Whatever Qin remembered, he was determined not to watch it happen again. Li Hao had lived 2 lives, and in neither could he bear watching an old man struggle with grief. He spared Qin the question he could not answer. Instead, Li Hao gently changed the subject. Where should he go if he wanted materials to nurture his beast? Qin quickly recovered his usual manner. Exchanges and auction houses were the normal choices, he explained. But anyone hunting for unusually good items eventually looked toward the underground black market, a place where sharp eyes could uncover value that ordinary counters missed. The opportunity came with teeth. Qin warned that good and bad people mixed freely there, and even an experienced wanderer could be cheated. Worse, criminals hid behind false identities. Li Hao was not to consider entering alone. Some sewers, Qin said, always sheltered rats. Li Hao scratched his head and laughed. Even if he wanted to brave such a place, what could he buy? His money was still sitting in Qin's pocket. The joke worked. Qin laughed too, and the last strain from their earlier conversation finally loosened. Qin understood the urgency beneath the joke. Li Hao wanted Xiao Zai to gain usable combat power quickly. Yet buds of life could only encourage growth and evolution. Life force was not an elemental attribute and could not directly make her stronger. Proper elemental materials were still indispensable. Asked which attribute he would emphasize, Li Hao answered without hesitation, the bug type. Qin studied the juvenile bee and revealed the detail that made the choice far more important. Xiao Zai was female. Li Hao already knew through the eye of omniscience, but widened his eyes and asked what was special about that. Qin called him ignorant and explained. The species itself was rare but not vanishingly scarce. Its mobility and survival ability made it popular among intermediate and advanced beast tamers. The imbalance lay elsewhere. Most purple gold mysterious bees were male, and capturing a female was exceptionally uncommon. Qin remembered an advanced beast tamer who controlled a female of this species. That tamer could fight some weaker great master beast tamers to a draw. The female was not personally stronger than a male. The advantage came from what B-type beasts relied upon above all else: numbers. Qin lifted his hand. Xiao Zai rose, circled through the air, then settled once more on Li Hao's shoulder. Her tiny size now concealed an astonishing future. Qin estimated that possessing this female was equivalent to possessing a massive swarm of roughly 500. That was why Li Hao's bug-type choice was correct. Strengthening that side would improve Xiao Zai's ability to survive and, crucially, to reproduce. Once she passed the larval stage, she could begin laying and hatching eggs. His combat force would not grow as one warrior, but as a colony. And Qin exposed the flaw in the plan. Reaching maturity would not be enough. Xiao Zai still lacked one crucial thing: a proper B-type beast nest in which the next generation could be laid and hatched. In one sentence, a future army became a present shopping problem. Qin regarded the question as painfully basic. B-type nests were plentiful in wilderness forests. Beast tamers collected nests and honey for exchanges and auction houses because bear-type beasts prized them as food, and prolonged consumption could even promote a bear's advancement. Li Hao weakly asked whether it had to be a purple-gold mysterious bee nest. Qin rolled his eyes. Bee nests shared roughly the same structure. One made by another bee-type beast would work temporarily. Once Xiao Zai produced enough descendants, her own swarm could build its proper home. Compatibility did not mean affordability. Bear-type beasts were popular for their attack and defense, so nests and honey stayed in high demand and low supply. Price depended on nest size and honey purity. A cheap specimen might cost dozens of federal gold coins. A superior one could exceed 1,000. Qin glanced sideways and caught Li Hao's expression souring. A nest costing a few dozen coins was within reach. One costing more than 1,000 was another matter entirely. The promise of 500 bees now stood behind a price tag that could swallow several times Li Hao's current payment. Qin did not leave him trapped between danger and expense. When the weekend came, he would personally take Li Hao to the underground black market. With Qin beside him, Li Hao could hunt for a suitable nest without walking alone among the hidden villains. After considering the alternatives, Li Hao could only accept. Suitable bee nest might cost more than Li Hao could afford, but entering the underground black market alone was worse. Qin had offered to escort him there on the weekend. After weighing expense against danger, Li Hao reluctantly nodded. For now, it was the only sensible route. Qin then corrected another part of Li Hao's routine. Xiao Zai should not remain inside the beast taming space all the time. That inner space held only the spiritual energy Li Hao himself absorbed. Letting the young purple-gold mysterious bee come outside and move around would help her grow. A plant-type exotic beast was different. Qin warned Li Hao not to summon it casually, and above all, not to let it appear in public. Xiao Zai needed room to move. The undying tree needed concealment. Li Hao would have to satisfy both needs without exposing his greatest secret. As if remembering one more matter, Qin reached into his chest pocket and handed over a file folder. Li Hao opened it, flipped through the materials, and stared in surprise. Qin had completed the translation of the beast taming method. The document Li Hao had been waiting for was finally in his hands. Qin rubbed his temples and called Li Hao frighteningly bold. As far as he knew, the boy had cultivated from nothing but a fragmented preface. One mistake could have destroyed his future. Qin did not know about the complete Chinese character Silk Scroll. Li Hao kept that secret, scratched his head, and smilingly promised not to be so reckless again. Qin displayed the original ancient book and offered to submit it to the federal government on Li Hao's behalf. Li Hao agreed without hesitation. The authentic Silk Scroll already held the detailed heaven and earth beast taming art, and Qin's translation gave him another reference. The damaged original no longer needed to remain in his custody. When Li Hao rejoined Xiao Miao, he explained the delay with a carefully harmless truth. He had encountered Director Qin in the library, and Qin had discussed precautions for Li Hao's summer internship at the Exotic Beast Research Institute. Then Li Hao noticed something unusual. Zhao, normally the first to hurry home, had stayed behind solely to wait for him. Zhao reminded Li Hao of the treasured ancient book he had photographed before. The previous day, he discovered that there were actually two books with matching patterns, apparently an upper and a lower volume. The volume in his father's study had been replaced by its counterpart, so Zhao secretly photographed the new one as well. Zhao put on his backpack, pulled the already packed Li Hao from the classroom, and hurried with him beyond the school. Only after they reached a dark corner did he open his backpack. With a triumphant smile, he produced a folder containing the photographs and offered Li Hao the secretly copied lower volume. Li Hao had once begged Zhao for the first photographs to verify the heaven and earth beast taming art. Now Qin's completed translation meant he no longer needed the Zhao text for that purpose. Instead of grabbing the new file, he left it between them and asked whether Zhao should really leak something his father treasured so deeply. At home, Li Dajun was eager to question his son about the day's assessment. Hao Chunmei stopped him with a dissatisfied glare. It was only a test, she said. Surely Li Hao could eat before being interrogated. His father smiled apologetically, scratched his head, and fell silent. Watching them, Li Hao felt his heart fill with warmth. Li Hao told them that the Exotic Beast Research Institute had administered 5 tests. The first 4 were basic assessments, and he had earned excellent in 3 of them. The 5th result had not been released, though Li Hao expected it would be only good. He presented the extraordinary outcome with an almost ordinary smile. Still shoveling rice into his mouth, Li Dajun nodded and called the results not bad. He even began a familiar little lecture. Then he stopped. 3 excellents out of 4 basic tests. His eyes lifted blankly toward Li Hao, his chopsticks struck the table, and he swallowed in a rush before demanding to hear the number again. 3 excellents, Li Hao repeated. Hao Chunmei froze as well. Li Dajun set down his bowl, slammed a hand on the table, and sprang up. Those marks meant Li Hao could genuinely aim for the Federal Public University. In his joy, Li Dajun declared that the heavens had finally granted the Li family a Beast Tamer. Li Hao's smile deepened at his father's comical celebration, but he refused to treat one assessment as destiny. These were tests before the final examinations, he reminded them, and no one knew whether the official judging criteria would change next year. Hao Chunmei, smiling now, reached out to tug her excited husband back toward restraint. Federal Public University was the future Li Dajun immediately imagined, but Li Hao had already chosen a different destination. His summer internship had brought that possibility within sight, and his interests pointed toward research rather than his father's inherited dream. Looking at both parents, Li Hao told them plainly, he wanted to enter the exotic Beast Research Institute. Words hung over the dinner table. Li Dajun and Hao Chunmei stared at their bright-eyed son, momentarily speechless. Federal Public University had sounded ambitious enough. The Exotic Beast Research Institute was the Federation's most authoritative research institution, and by everything they knew, even harder to enter. Hao Chunmei considered the choice and found herself hopeful. Li Hao's 3 excellent marks were astonishing, but one breakthrough did not guarantee his old martial weakness would never return. More importantly, researchers were not routinely sent to the fiercest front lines to face beast tides. She hurried to speak first. She supported him.